Ladies and gentlemen, it's time for the Schmoedown Rundown. Introducing first, Frankie Stats Janisch. And their co-host, the man of controversy, Mr. Brian Davids. And finally, your host, Aaron Turner. Let's get ready to Schmoedown.
What's going on, Movie Trivia Schmoedown fans? It is episode number 48 of the Schmoedown Rundown, the official after show for the Movie Trivia Schmoedown. My name is Aaron. I am your host. Joining me, Statman Frank Janisch. What's up, dude?
Yeah, I'm still here, kicking and screaming, making my way through another week of Schmoedown action. I'm barely hanging on, guys.
Making your way downtown. Also here, Mr. Brian Davids. What's up, man?
Aaron, Frank, the solution is simple. Stop making saga trilogies. The saga and its rich history that we're so invested in can't continue in a standalone type fashion. Put Poe Dameron in a Dunkirk movie where he plays Tom Hardy's farrier. Send Finn on a quest to find his family. Have Rey function as Furiosa in a Fury Road type story. Then bring everybody back together every few years, all of the Avengers. That way we can watch Rey grow up across 3 decades, not after a 3-decade absence.
Brian, I'm sorry. This is the Schmoedown Rundown, not the Jedi Council Rundown. You do realize that, right?
My mistake.
It could happen to anyone, but not me.
All right, well, before we get into some recaps, I got a lot of them. We're going to be joined later in the episode by Andrew Ghai, one half of Team Action. Andrew sat down with us and recapped the top 10 Blofeld's cat match, something that's never been done in the history of the Schmoedown Rundown. It's unprecedented. As usual, we set the tone for everything else in the terms of Schmoedown news. And speaking of that, Brian, what do we have?
Well, speaking of Schmoedown news, Christian Harloff announced that he'd be going on a short paternity leave and that an interim commissioner would be taking his place. Oddly enough, despite Harloff giving no indication that the fan base would have a say, the fans went into James Bond mode and overwhelmed social media with whom they thought should run things in his absence. So I'd like to throw cold water on a couple things since reality checks are important in life. The decision has already been made. That's the first one. Secondly, John Campea, a name that came up a lot, he no longer works for Complex, folks. So this isn't like the last time he left without actually leaving. He's not walking through that door this time around. The reality is he only left Movie Talk to host a magazine show for Complex. His office remained where it was. He just misled a lot of folks into thinking he was leaving and working for Lionsgate when it was Complex and Lionsgate teaming up a la Go 90 and Complex for Awesome-tacular. So speculation is fun, as my old favorite used to say, but reality needs to be enforced from time to time. Also, as we reported on August 13th, James Bond is no longer an inner geekdom category. It was reinforced on the Schmoes No Show this week, and people acted like this wasn't already known. So, once again, the rundown is a resource, folks. But as far as the commissioner goes, this wasn't inside information. There was nothing about Harloff's announcement that ever indicated he was looking for fan suggestions.
All right, guys, we're going to jump into our first recap here. It was the Celebrity Schmoedown. It was the Losers Club from It going at it in free-for-all style.
Well, let me just start off by saying the belt was sitting on the table, which is further proof that the title belts do not leave the property unless there's a promo appearance that requires them. I previously reported this, and people tried to disagree with me. So, again, further proof the singles belt was here for this. It's usually here with all the other belts. They're property of Christian and Collider, so you can't blame them for taking care of such property. But Aaron, what did you think of the Goosebumps question popping up again? Of course, this is an appropriate match for it to happen. This could be an audience that would be interested in Goosebumps, but enough about Goosebumps. Chosen Jacobs, that guy came out like Ali, one of my favorite entrances. There was a kid that came out like George Costanza Jr. with Seinfeld music. I believe his name was Jeremy. So great stuff there. A lot of interesting introductions, but Finn Wolfhard of Stranger Things fame, he came out to Smash Mouth's All-Star. Are they trying to jinx his career? I don't understand the choice.
I wonder if they gave them the choice of this music. I would think so, since the Seinfeld theme. I don't know why you would go with a 90s pop song, but I'm not here to judge.
Well, that's the thing. One of Jeremy's friends said that Jeremy had never seen an episode of Seinfeld. So I think these were just chosen for them. So, I mean, guys, no one would pick Smash Mouth's All-Star as their intro song. No one.
That's a fair critique, I guess.
Speaking of fair critiques, is it a little strange that they would ask a bunch of 11 to 14-year-olds questions from the 70s, 80s, 90s when they were born in like 2005?
Well, this is what we talked about last week because we weren't sure what questions were going to be asked. That's why I was very interested to see what they were going to get. And sure, they got the Star Wars question, which made me laugh hysterically because they didn't know and said they didn't watch Star Wars. I thought that was pretty fun. To go for those kind of questions from decades way before they were born, kind of weird, but what else are you going to ask? I don't know. Just Pixar? I don't know.
Well, they could have asked things that are more from 2005 to 2017, films that they have seen in recent times. And look, the point of these celebrity Schmoedowns is not to have the Patriots versus MODOK again. The point is just to put on an entertaining show, but you would think they would pull from films that are not from the 70s or 80s and at least give them a chance to answer more questions. But regardless, it was still an entertaining package overall. And Clark, she got to read a Guardians of the Galaxy question, though, and that was a callback to that time where she lost because she couldn't name all 5 of them. So I'm so glad that I read the Schmoedown of that awful multiple answer question trend that was here and gone in 5 minutes.
Well, one thing I do have to put over this match for is that I think that the commissioner has found a way to refine these celebrity Schmoedown matches by this one's a free-for-all. The Glow match was like a team battle. The upcoming celebrity match that we have is also represented by one Schmoedown personality on each team. I think that's cool. I think that's a way to make it different and unique, but still give you that flavor that we know and love of our regular competitors like Jeff Snyder and Roca. I think that's cool. So as long they're keeping it interesting, it's not just one-on-one where, you know, maybe that's not the best way to do it. So I like how they're refining this process.
In some cases, it's important to use league players as bait to ensure that the quality of play maintains a certain level, even though the goal of these matches isn't heated competition. But as I said last week, just be careful that you're not stepping on someone like Sam Witwer. You do not want to take away opportunities from someone who is good at trivia, especially if you have 2 opponents that or 2 competitors that are potentially good at trivia. So I don't want to see Jeff and Roca play if we have 2 awesome celebrities who know their trivia. So I just want to see them play. We can see Snyder or JTE play anytime. I want to see 2 people go at it that are celebrities, as long as they know their trivia. You can kind of tell in advance who knows their stuff, but sometimes you can't. So I get why they're trying to play it safe. But I'm very disappointed that Finn Wolfhard didn't have the nickname of Finn Wolfhard and Play Harder. Yes, I tweeted this, but I just wish he'll come back to use just that nickname, Finn Wolfhard and Play Harder.
Frank, what did you think of this?
Well, the one thing I was just looking from this match was see just how fun these kids would have, what kind of personality these kids have. And one kid that stuck out to me particularly was Jack Dylan Grazer, one of the first guys out there. And I had a great time watching him. And the other thing I loved about this match is they had this little picture-in-picture with the couch. So when someone was done or eliminated from the match, they weren't completely thrown out of the match, not to be seen or heard again. So they made a way to get everyone involved throughout. And I thought that was a great idea. So Jack being on the couch, chiming in every once in a while, talking about, I think it's this answer, throwing out joke answers and whatnot. That was pretty humorous. So I had a good time overall watching this match and watching these kids pull out maybe a couple surprising answers given their age. So that was a lot of fun to watch.
Yeah, Turner loves picture-in-picture. Anytime picture-in-picture shows up in the Schmoedown, Aaron Turner kind of claps a little. Isn't that right, Aaron?
How dare you? But there's also The production value on this was off the charts, especially with the balloons every once in a while, and of course Pennywise dipping in and out of the frame, reminiscent of Toasty from Mortal Kombat for the gamers out there. I enjoyed this match. I thought it was fun. I'm super hyped for the It movie, which is exactly the purpose of this Schmoedown, to get me hyped for it, and I am. So mission accomplished, I would say, guys.
Yeah, all in all, it was another successful Celebrity Schmoedown. It introduced new viewers to the league that otherwise wouldn't know about the Schmoedown. It also promoted it to the Collider audience in a fun and unique way that isn't some junket nonsense. So remember, folks, the competition, not the priority here. It's entertainment. If you want more competitive league play that includes great players like Drew McQueenie and Team Action, then support these matches, because this is how the league grows and sustains itself as a business. All that being said, they asked a question about who directed Mama. Of course, that was It director Andy Muschietti's previous film. And I wish they did more questions like this that was a bit more meta, things that they might know. Maybe a co-star of theirs, for example, Finn Wolfhard, what is a previous film he's been in, or just something to that effect, to where it was things they might know, stuff that was a bit more personal, a bit more meta. That way, there's a bit more laughs in the future. There's a bit more answers in the future. So they could have done a whole match with questions like who directed Mama. It's a meta level that way, and there's more likelihood for laughter and whatnot. So just something to consider for next time.
I do like Brian's idea of having these sort of meta questions involved. I think it would make for a more interesting and humorous match. Although I thought this match was interesting and humorous to begin with. So if there's any way to expand upon that, I think that's a good idea that Brian has brought forth. So I look forward again to the next celebrity match that's going to be happening soon. See what the structure is of that. But in regards to this match, kind of excited to go see it. Again, I've said before, horror is not really my cup of tea, but I'm going to go see this soon. So this match only made it that much more, or built my anticipation to see much more, because I know who these kids are, and I'm looking forward to seeing how well they perform on screen.
The guy who saw an advanced screening of Annabelle Creation says horror is not his bag?
No, I mean, I'll expand my horizons, so that's why I did go see Annabelle Creation, because I want to watch more of those types of films, because I didn't watch those growing up. My mom wouldn't let me because she didn't like them, so I have to do it as an adult now.
I think you're a closet horror fan, Frank. I think you're a bigger horror fan than you give yourself credit for.
Oh, maybe I'll get there, but it's not right now, I would say. Well, Frank, I do like Scream and Halloween, but,
Well, Frank does have Movie Pass now, so who knows?
Sort of.
It's in the mail.
It's time for this segment about the prince who was promised, a.k.a. the Ward Wing.
This is art, Mr. White.
This week, Brian Ward wedding singered me when he riffed on my favorite movie, Tombstone, and dressed top 10 in Wyatt Earp and Doc Holliday attire. Now I know how Adam Sandler felt when he saw Angela Featherstone in a Van Halen t-shirt. However, Blofeld also represented other legendary characters from that film. So, to recap, JSR was Wyatt, the pizza guy was Doc Holliday, which was a bold statement to make considering Val Kilmer's performance was the greatest and most overlooked supporting performance in the 90s, and is up there with Ledger's Joker as far as iconic portrayals of popular characters we've seen on screen many times. It's bold because the pizza guy's supporting performance on top 10 of late has not been as legendary as Kilmer's Doc Holliday. Meanwhile, Mark and Draco was Michael Bihn's Johnny Ringo, while Robert Meyer Burnett was Powers Booth's Curly Bill. May PB rest in peace. Aside from that, he riffed on Monster Squad for Wolves of Steel and LTTP, which William Bibbiani of Crave Online and IGN called a triumph. Lastly, DC movie news, as well as the team action of the right side of the bracket above the line, received the Dark Knight treatment as McQueenie was the Joker, Kalinowski was the Batman, Gertler was Commissioner Gordon, while Sam with two M's was Two-Face. So the Schmoedown continues to be a more interesting place thanks to the creative contributions of guys named Brian, especially Brian Ward. Follow him on Twitter at Brian E. Ward and check out more of his work at brianeward.com.
All right, guys, we're going to get to our first recap here. It was Team Trek, Scott Mantz and Jason Inman versus Team Action, Ben Bateman and Andrew Ghai, or we just calling him Drew now, I guess. I guess we're that cool now.
I'm going Drew.
Okay, fair enough. Well, in the promo, Team Action showing why they are one of the best in the business, imitating Team Trek. Ben doing a great Scott Mantz impression. I'm not sure what Drew was doing. I don't really feel like Jason Inman talks like that, but I had fun nonetheless. What about you?
Yeah, Action's promos, you've got to tune into those. They're evolving into one of the best in the game, and they made sure to include their video that they posted on late Tuesday night? Monday night? It was late Monday night. They posted this video that was truly the perfect encapsulation of the Schmoedown's tone. They were sitting in suits, drinking some scotch at one of their houses or apartments, and it just smelled like WWE kayfabe, like a promo for an upcoming wrestler debuting. It reminded me kind of Val Venus's promo video before he appeared in the WWE. It was so well done. It was so perfectly executed. It got me so excited for the match the next day, and they wisely included this in the edit at the last minute. So what did you think of that video that they posted?
I thought it was really cool. Were they drinking old fashions?
I just thought it was scotch neat, but I didn't look too closely, admittedly.
Okay. Well, could be a classy drink for some classy gentlemen. But yeah, I mean, I agree with you. It is like an old-timey promo. I'm not ready to call it a Val Venus type promo. That's well, we'll save that for another time. But I do have a point of contention though. When they made the Wild Hogs crack, I actually like Wild Hogs. I think it's a fine movie. I didn't appreciate them saying that Scott Mantz was past his prime. I didn't appreciate that one. But it's okay because they're heels and that's fine.
Now, to be fair, I didn't mean a Val Venus promo. I meant they would do these teasers for wrestlers before they would debut. The Edge had an extensive kind of preview trailer, if you will, teaser, if you will. So I kind of compared it to that. But either way, these guys have figured out the way to succeed in the Schmoedown, and this video proves it. They understand exactly what they needed to do to get the fans on their side. It's weird. In the Facebook group, which we both admin, I'm seeing Team Action as the favorite competitor because that's something that you have to fill out before you join. I'm seeing more Team Actions in the last few days than in the last 3 months. So they are doing it the right way right now.
They got their own merch now as well, thanks to the great Brian Ward, of course.
He's outfitting everybody, folks. He's that good.
Yeah, damn right. Let's talk about the entrances for a minute. Team Action, pretty standard. This comes out to the Dr. Dre music. A little bit of a remix in there. The lyrics are not in there anymore, probably for copyright reasons. But anyway, same thing from Trek. A little bit of, it's okay. I do like that Team Action did stick with the "Who the F is Jason Inman." That's one of my favorite quotes of all time from this show. That's amazing. What do you think of the entrances here?
Action, par for the course. Again, nothing against it. It was just compared to what they've done in the past, it did not catch my attention. Typically, I always write notes as I watch. I'm always writing something. And for the entrances, I didn't have any notes. So it was just a vanilla entrance. I had some stuff more about Christian that he said after their entrances because Christian made sure to say, or as I call it, he Brian Davids proofed it, how Action challenged Trek before their match since they telegraphed after Trek's win in round one that these two would be playing each other. So in this match, Christian was very careful to keep saying, oh, Trek or Action, they challenged before this and after this. So they're being very careful about the language used. So that's when you know this show is making its way into the show psychologically.
Brian Davids proof. I'm going to write that down.
But the one note that I did have about Trek's promo was the fact that they are furthering this echo chamber about Action being this one category wonder when their round one match against Deep Cuts proved that they are more than just a one-trick pony. So is that the best Trek can do when it comes to hyping and promoting their match, is to go after something that Action has already disproved a week earlier? So I really thought that was a disappointing way for Trek to supposedly get in the heads of their opponents. So, guys, that was already broken. That this whole urban legend that they were only good at action, that's done. You cannot use that anymore. So, and lastly, when action came out, they were booed like the Patriots are booed. However, with the Patriots, I think it's genuine. With action, I think the audience was directed to give them a Patriots type booing. It seemed orchestrated for some reason. Action's getting this big push as the latest and greatest heels, which they certainly are. But I feel like that reaction was a bit forced. It sounded strained. It sounded unnatural. With the Patriots, I buy the boos. I buy the screams. They've earned that reaction. But action, it just seemed a bit too orchestrated, a bit too directed. I don't know. Did you get that vibe at all?
Maybe a little bit of maybe a laugh track almost. Like
I'm not saying that. I just feel like perhaps the Schmoedown director said before the match started taping, hey, when action comes out, give them an extra level boo.
Are you? I'll just assume here. This is just my pure conjecture. Is Wendy Lee off to the side with a sign that when they come out that just says "boo" to the crowd, and then when Trek comes out, it says applause? Is that what we're thinking here?
I like it. Wendy Lee is in charge of fluffing the audience.
All
I mean,
right.
that's why Real Rejects last week kept saying Wendy Lee, because she was standing close to the stage, fluffing the audience. And fluffing, it's not just a term used in shady industries. Jimmy Kimmel has a fluffer. If you go see a taping for a late night show, you will see fluffers getting the audience ready in between commercial breaks before the show starts. So don't just phrase me to death. Don't phrase me to death, Turner.
You got it. Let's talk about round one now. It was Team Trek coming out. Mance getting 6, Inman getting 5. And on the team action side, Andrew getting 6. Ben nearly getting them all, only missing 1. He got 7. So it was 13-11 action after the first round.
Some notes about round 1. Question 1, Minions. Bateman was the only one to get this question. He got 1 point. It was the only point of this question. This really set the tone for how this match would go. Bateman had a next level performance. He's showing why he belongs in singles, and more on that in a second. Question 2 is about Nathan and Ex Machina. That's played by Oscar Isaac. Everybody got it right. Meanwhile, Clark Wolf threw a vase against the wall when she heard this question because she famously had that confusing question asking, name one of the 2 leads in Ex Machina, male leads in Ex Machina. She thought they were asking for the character name, which is an understandable mistake. So they made this same question much easier to answer. And so I just picture her throwing a vase against the wall while I'm watching this match. But now question 3, the Scott Evil Seth Green question, everybody got it right, but Christian was struggling there as it seemed like he wanted Mance to show his board, but he couldn't get the words out. Or he just forgot Ben Bateman Media's name, something that he seemed to be doing throughout the match. I kept getting this vibe that Christian could not remember Ben's name. Was this something that you caught?
Yeah, I don't know what was going on. It seemed like he was a little off his game in terms of commentary and things like that. It just wasn't, I don't know, it wasn't a full polished game from the commissioner I'm used to seeing.
I mean, he's always good, but he just seemed distracted when it came to calling out Ben's name. I don't know, maybe he confused him with Tom or Thomas or Mapother. I don't know, but going into question 7, Drew was the only one to get that weird Candyman question. So all in all, though, Ben Bateman with a near perfect round. He's making the case for singles. However, as long as the team of action, of course, is playing great, why mess with their chemistry? For lack of a better example, Blink-182, when their guitarist and co-lead vocalist Tom DeLonge went off with Travis Barker to do a side project in 2002 called Boxcar Racer, that deeply upset the other founding member of Blink, bass player, vocalist Mark Hoppus. Mark stumbled across some emails from their label that offered Tom a solo record whenever he wanted one, and from that point, he became incredibly insecure. So this had a big impact on the band's breakup just a couple years later. So even though Drew is not an insecure guy, sometimes these things get problematic when one guy is given the invitation to make the leap to singles and the other is not. That's why you can't have it. J. Steven Roca pulled on that thread in the post-interview match because he knows what it's like to carry a teammate. So more on that later. Do you think that has any effect on team chemistry when one guy gets the invitation to go to singles and the other guy is left out? Do you think that could possibly have an effect on chemistry? Maybe not in Action's case, but in general.
You guys work together as a team. You're there every single day, guys or girls. You're always in the trenches with each other, and then one gets a little bit more spotlight than the other. And sometimes it's cool. It's like, yeah, man, go do your thing. But sometimes you take it as a slight. And if that happens, then you start to see the cracks. You start to see dissension. It can mess up a team. We've seen it before.
Countless bands have broken up because one member was offered a solo deal and the others weren't. It's a tale as old as time. It truly is. So I don't think it's going to be the case with these guys just because they're good friends on and off the air. They do other shows together. So they have a pretty tight-knit bond. But it is still something that I think is a valid point to make in general when one guy gets all the spotlight and the other doesn't.
Let's talk about round 2 now, where Trek came up. They got 80s, 5 of 6 for 9 points. Action did get a 1-point steal, stealing the Iceman's real name, Tom Kazansky, in Top Gun. 20-14. Team Trek now has the lead after their turn. What'd you think here?
Well, first off, Trek took 80s because they were too afraid to do a second spin because Cameron Diaz was on the board. And this sets up a trend that we're seeing a lot lately where if there's a past match where a team has had a lot of drama with a particular category, the commish will include that category in this upcoming match. So that is why Cameron Diaz was back on the board, because it haunted Mance once before. So Christian knows what he's doing, guys. He knows what to pull on, what to come back to in this case. But question 4, you already referenced it. Iceman's real name. It went to multiple choice. However, Christian mispronounced Tom Kazansky as Tom Kaczynski
3 times.
Trek should have challenged this since Christian mispronounced the answer's name like he was the Unabomber's brother. Nobody's going to think of the Iceman when they hear the Unabomber's last name, Kaczynski's. So Ben Bateman should not have been the one to correctly pronounce this character's name. Furthermore, his name was misspelled on the screen, so it's no surprise why it was stolen by Action as they took their lead to 16-14.
And not only that, I mean, they're huge Top Gun fans, so it was pretty much in the bank if Trek wasn't going to get it.
Trek gave the answer of Mike Metcalf because they were going with the coolest sounding name because Iceman was a cool guy. Yeah, he was a prick and all, but he was a cool guy, and so they went with the coolest sounding name because Tom Kaczynski sounds like the Unabomber. So once again, folks, multiple choice or the way the questions are worded can throw people off of the right answer. It disrupts their thinking, as this mispronunciation did. This is why I stress pronunciation so much in this game.
Let's talk about Team Action's turn. They got Fantasy Sci-Fi on their second spin. They went 5 of 6. They got 9 points. Trek did jump in with a 1-point steal. Jason Inman stole it. Neil Gaiman wrote Stardust. It doesn't surprise me, Jason Inman being a comic guy, Neil Gaiman being a prolific comic writer. 23-21, Team Action has the lead back after the second round. Brian, what'd you think?
Well, Ben, during our interview a couple weeks ago, he said something interesting about the fact that he didn't want to be the team that always vied for comic book movies, something most of the league does. And I was kind of puzzled by that statement. But now I understand why he made that comment and why he ultimately passed on the category. They want to make their money somewhere else. They don't want to be another team that picks this silly category like every other team does. They want to prove that they are more well-rounded than that. And as I often say, teams or players will pick categories on the wheel to make a statement to the rest of the league and to the fan base, to the audience, us, that they are for real and that they're well-rounded. So props to Ben Bateman for having the guts to spin again when almost every other team or player would have stuck with comic book movies.
Going back to that interview as well, Ben did something in that interview that I didn't even realize until the second time that I listened to it. If you go back, he's not talking about just movies. He's talking about directors. He's talking about movie release dates. He's talking about the other actors in the film. Like, this guy, you think that he's being pigeonholed into one category, and this guy just pulls out everything. And it was fascinating to learn that and then watch it be applied here.
Yeah, that's why I was so disappointed by Trek's promo, because they were again pulling on the, oh, they're a one-trick pony, they're a one-trick pony. And that's just not the case, and our interview reinforced that. So regarding question 2, the NSEA Protector, this is a perfect example of why I am an action ally.
The NSEA Protector is a space vessel from what 90s comedy sci-fi film?
5, 4, 3, 2.
Galaxy Quest.
That's correct. 2 points.
Got it. 2 points. 2 points.
They took their time, they debated, and they came up with what was likely an educated guess. Again, folks, competitors listening, take your time. Something critically acclaimed did not always do in their round 1 loss. So this is a perfect example of why I believe in Bateman and Ghai, because they take their time, they took the educated guess, and they got Galaxy Quest. So this is really a great example of why this team has promise in the future, because of this question right here, just how they work themselves through it.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up, because I have a point I want to make here too. During that particular question, if you notice, Scott Mantz, he's kind of losing it over there because he knows the answer. He knows it's Galaxy Quest. And him being a big Star Trek fan, his third favorite Star Trek film is Galaxy Quest. He said that many times. He knew it. I don't know if he tipped the hand maybe to action because the category was not Star Trek. So maybe they eliminated that in their mind, that it wasn't Star Trek, but it's got to be something close. So why not throw out Galaxy Quest? I might be reading a little bit too much into that, but competitors as well, do not tip your hand at an answer, especially when that's kind of your namesake at this point.
That's a great point. And it also leads to the fact that what a great way to crush the spirits of your competitors when they are primed to steal something and they are itching to steal a question, and you come up with the answer. That deflated Trek a great deal, I think. And whatever hopes they had on winning that match, I think at that point they realized, I think this one is not going to go our way. So it was a great way to deflate whatever hopes and dreams or momentum that Trek thought they were going to get via a steal that never came.
Both teams ended up getting 10 points in round 2, so we're kind of at the same stalemate we were in round 1, more or less. 23-21 action going into round 3, which brought up Trek first. Jason Inman taking the 2-pointer. Jennifer Lawrence was the category. What did she get her Oscar win for? What film? Silver Linings Playbook was the answer. Inman not even going to guess it. I don't like that. I think that's bad strategy. Got to throw out something. Missed it. Mantz was not happy.
As this question was being read and the answer of Silver Linings Playbook was then said, I kept picturing Whitney Seibold throwing a vase at his wall screaming, F you, because this was the same answer and or question that stumped Critically Acclaimed in their infamous round 3 2-pointer, where it was actually American Hustle, even though the question wording was completely opposite of what it should have been. So once again, I think this was an homage to that moment with Whitney, and I think this question was written because of it. But I don't understand why Mantz wouldn't take this when he covers the big stars of Hollywood for Access Hollywood. Inman successfully answered their last match's 3-pointer too. So why mess with the formula that worked last time? Trek showed little confidence for Jason Inman in this round, despite his significant Sidney Poitier pull in their last match. So I have no clue why Mantz wouldn't take this when this is in his wheelhouse, Jennifer Lawrence, like her or not. And the formula of Jason taking the 3-pointer works so well in round 1. Why deviate? Do you think that's ridiculous to deviate from a successful formula?
I don't know if it's necessarily. I think what they were thinking was they wanted to play it safe, and with 3 points on the line, you want it to be the person that probably has the best chance to answer it, which would be Mantz. I don't know if that was their strategy. They were playing a little bit scared. I'm not sure. But that's what I thought of. I know a lot of people went to that, like why did Jason Inman take Jennifer Lawrence? And then as we'll talk about in the 3-point question here in a minute.
Mantz goes to all these award shows. He rubs elbows with people like Jennifer Lawrence because she's often at these award shows. So he may not be the biggest fan of hers, but there's no doubt he can probably get most of her trivia correct. So that was a complete misfire, especially since Jason taking the 3-pointer in the last match went very well.
I'm going to assume your strategy that you're talking about here is kind of like in football when you get down inside the 10-yard line, you're on 4th down, and you might as well just take the 3, get something rather than nothing.
It showed no confidence for Jason Inman. Clearly they wanted the weaker player in this match to take the lesser valued point. Complete misfire. Again, coming out of round 2, I think their confidence was dashed a little bit by that big steal from Action. I just cannot believe that the guy who probably has hung out with Jennifer Lawrence in plenty of environments, plenty of times, would pass on her category. Just doesn't make sense to me. Real quick, Mance missing this 3-pointer is exactly why you should not have deviated from what worked for you in round 1. Why switch it up at that point?
So it's down to Trek. Their 5-pointer. They got to get it here or they risk a TKO. They could not pull it. The 2 leads in Repo Men, Jude Law and Forrest Whitaker. And it was Team Action, not even having to answer a round 3 question. 23-21. Action TKO's Trek. Brian, what'd you think?
Yeah, it's important to give those answers of Jude Law and Forrest Whitaker since they were not given on the show. That rarely happens nowadays, but some of the audience was probably wondering. But it's rather interesting that Trek's round 3 went almost the same way as Deep Cut's match against Action. Deep Cuts couldn't pull any of their round 3 questions either. Trek did have to answer their 2-pointer in that match, but ultimately their opponent buckled with their 3 questions. So interesting how these teams keep collapsing against Action in round 3. So I'm really frustrated because this really shows what we've always said about Trek. They can look so good in one match, and then the very next match, they look like the real rejects. They completely misfire on strategy. The wrong person goes and the other person should. They just cannot focus consistently and maintain the formula that has worked for them so many times in the past. So it's easy to second guess in hindsight, but you just played a match in round 1. Why mess with things? I don't get it.
Yeah, I don't want to bury the lead here. I mean, of course, a Team Trek collapse is a bad thing, but the story here is Ben and Andrew. These guys talked it, they walked it. Again, they said they were going to kick Mance's butt, and they did it. They did that. They've done everything that they've said so far. And now they're moving on. They're in the final 4. Team Action, who a lot of people in their brackets, don't lie to yourself, did not even have them getting out of the first round. Incredible stuff.
Not even Frank and I picked Team Action against better judgment. So they are proving us wrong, and I'm glad they're proving us wrong because I'm loving that we have new blood in this league. I'm glad that I'm excited to watch new teams, new heels, true heels, guys that are good at being heels. So I'm loving the success that they're having. Again, in a very short time, they have shown that they understand exactly what it takes to succeed in the Schmoedown. So credit to everyone. Credit to Christian for giving these guys a shot because they are becoming one of the best stories of the second part of 2017. Rachel Cushing was the story of the first half. She still is the story of 2017, but Team Action has really owned the second half, in my opinion. But I think it's time for the Emma view, the devastation, which was a word that kept coming up. And Team Action, man, you like to say the word stiff. They were firing shots left and right about John Roca. The alternative to winning is being John Steven Roca. Of course, we got to mention Team Action plays the winner of Blofeld's Cat in top 10. That is why they were firing all these preemptive shots at JSR in top 10 in case they play them. Weird. JSR showed up. He crashed the interview. Were you expecting JSR to show up after Action was firing all these shots at JSR in top 10?
I was not expecting him to show up, and then there he was. No, I wasn't expecting it. I thought that maybe the interview crashing would cease. I thought that maybe Team Action would get a second to just cut a promo, but I guess not. Out comes the Outlaw in the Life Preserver. There he was, crashing the interview.
Drew led this off with a real humdinger. Is humdinger a word, Aaron?
I'll allow it.
yeah, this humdinger of, oh, it looks like an antique. So great line there. But then Ben, not to be outdone, says, oh, this model talks. I'm paraphrasing a bit, but man, these guys had the dish ready. And again, the reason I expected JSR to come out was because they led their post interview with a shot at JSR. So that is a clue right there. Then they said he traded in whiskey for chai tea lattes. They said he was better as the man in black. And then Team Action called out JSR for doing the same thing that Team Action did to Trek after they won in round 1. So I like how both teams do the same thing to each other and still call each other out when they both crash interviews. But Team Action, more importantly, they were talking to him like he's a face. The thing is, the top 10 fans are now telling me that he's a tweener, something they only started saying after the face material failed time and time again. So nobody says, you know what, this heel stuff isn't quite working, so I'm going to be a tweener. Make no mistake, he tried to be a face. There is evidence on record that they wanted to turn him into a face, and it clearly didn't work. And so now they're saying, oh, he's a tweener. Oh, you can be a face with an edge. Again, all this tweener talk started after the face stuff failed. Aaron, do you have a take on this?
I agree with everything that you said, and I will leave it at that.
Well, lastly, Rocha got in their face, and he said, you've never played a team like us before. You've never played a player like me before. You know, everything's going to be different when you play me. He was being very intense. He was acting like the Rocha of old, like the outlaw of old. And then Ben conveniently said, you haven't even won your second round match yet. Another point in regard to Ben, I like how Team Action fixed the grammar in regards to where's the belt. Some were saying where's the belt, others were saying where's the belt, like the famous commercial slogan, where's the beef. So I like that this was corrected because grammatically it's correct as where's the belt. For where's the belts, it would actually be where are the belts, which you can't really do something catchy in that regard. I suppose you could slang it up by saying where are the belts, but that just doesn't sound right. It's not proper English. So where's the belt? That sounds great either way. I like the homage once again to where's the beef. And this is their all the belts. This is their all the records. It's catchy. It's hashtagable. And it's clearly being used to sell t-shirts already. Now, as far as Trek's post-interview, there wasn't a lot to report here. There was a lot of Stewie fight for those who are amused by that sort of thing. But there was some conversation about the fatal wildcard match, or the singles wildcard to decide the final spot in the singles tournament. And Mance and Inman are in this wildcard match. So do you think either of these guys has a chance to win?
Well, I'll tell you who I want to see win. I want to see Mance win it, because that means he has to face the Outlaw in round 1. So you will get a de facto Mance v. Rocha 3, which you probably wouldn't get otherwise due to their records and placements on the card. We could have got it here if, Trek would have won in top 10 as well, but it's not going to happen. Trek was eliminated before they could even get the chance. So I want to see Mance win. Do I think Inman has a chance? Sure, he has as good a chance as anybody, I think, as long as Jim Davids not involved. We can talk about that later. But given the choice of the two, I would say Mance over Inman.
See, that's the thing. As much as I would like to see Inman play JSR again, I want to see new blood make it into the singles tournament, whether it's Jim Davids, the Flying V, Davids Vendetta, whether it's Mark Bernardin, whether it's Whitney Seibel. I want to see new blood. We have mined the JSR Mance storyline as much as we can mine it to this point. Yeah, it would still be entertaining, don't get me wrong, but there are new rivalries that we can set up because we've got so many good players, especially in singles. Singles is so stacked right now. That is why we are able to do these singles wildcard matches like we're doing. But I think both of them do have a shot to win in regard to Inman and Mance. But coming out of the post-interview, Christian rubbed salt on RB3's wounds by referring to Action as the Young Bucks. So I know it was probably a slip. It wasn't an intentional thing, but RB3 gets his stable canceled on him when he wasn't even there to defend it. and then he applies the name to Team Action. That has got to hurt if you're RB3. So I don't know what to make of this. RB3 got a raw deal. RB3 deserves more time in this league. He's underutilized. The guy has ability. But at this point, Action has now won 3 in a row. There are very few teams to win 3 in a row. I know that Trek's done it. The Patriots have obviously done it. Teams like T10, they've never done it. So it's a very rare club in the Schmoedown as far as winning 3 in a row. So any final thoughts, Turner?
Team Action has not lost a match in regulation. The only loss that they have was overtime with Nerds Watch. So take that for what you will. Team Action has started as a team that we weren't sure about because of the close match with Late to the Party, and of course that unfortunate loss to the Nerds Watch. I think they have shown what they really are, and that's a well-organized, diverse team. I think they could make a real run here in this Final Four. They've only got 2 matches to go before they're there. They're going to be tough to beat. And for Team Trek, as far as they're concerned, I like seeing these guys. I like the dynamic that Inman and Mance have. But I don't know. Like it depends on which Team Trek shows up. Is it going to be the Scott Mance that's just on fire talking about Tom Cruise? Is it going to be Inman with the save at the end? Is it going to be a whole Eva bit? I don't know what we get with Team Trek. They're wildly inconsistent right now. They were top contenders at one point, and now they're probably mid to low carders at this point. So it sucks to say that because I like both guys, but it's the truth of the matter.
Remember, Turner, they were one bad Makuga call away from a title. So the league would be totally different had we had the new buzzers at that point. But yeah, like you said, you don't know what you're going to get with Trek. They are the Jekyll and Hyde of the Schmoedown. They can look like a title team one week and like the real rejects the next week. But, last week, Frank and I argued about Team Action and their coming out party. I believe last week was their true coming out party because they showed they were not dependent on the action category. They showed that they didn't need it to win. They used other categories to do so. They had an impressive win, and people always try to say, well, the Deep Cuts wasn't a great team. Big wins can only come against good teams. And ultimately, the Schmoedown, you're playing against yourself when it comes down to it. I mean, you're playing another team, sure, but your performance is still your performance regardless of whom you play. And so their performance last week proved it to me, but now they're on a streak. 3 in a row means you're on a streak. And they are as exciting to watch. They get the Schmoedown, and I cannot wait to see what they've got in store for their Final Four opponent. If they've already impressed with these first 2 matches as far as the showmanship, I cannot wait to see what they have up their sleeves for the semis.
Speaking of Frank Janisch, he could not join us for this recap or the next one, but he is going to provide us with some juicy, amazing, sweaty stats for the next 2 particular matches. Here's his stats for Team Trek versus Team Action. Frank, stat me up.
All right, here we go with your stat breakdown of Trek versus Action Round 2. And we start off in the first round of questions here. Trek had 11 points, maintaining their pace as they did from their last match. And then it's Team Action with an improved performance from last match, getting 13 first round points. And we have to look at Andrew Ghai. He scored 6 points this round, an improvement from last match. Ben Bateman, though, once again answered 7 questions for the second match in a row. Going on to round 2, both teams getting 10 points. So that means Deep Cuts is still down 2 points, 23-21. They have their third round questions, and they could not answer any of their 2, 3, or 5 point questions. A big disappointment, but it does give Team Action and their Action Army their first TKO of the tournament. Looking at Action's performance, they answered 19 out of 23 questions for an 82.61% accuracy rate. And now looking at Trek's performance, they answered 17 out of 26 questions for a 65.38% accuracy rate. There you go, guys. That is your stat breakdown for Team Trek versus Team Action.
All right, guys, we're going to slide into our next recap here. It was Above the Line, Drew McWeeny and Sam Levine versus DC Movie News, Adam Gertler and Mike the Killer Kalinowski. I like the promo from Above the Line here where Sam pretty much said, hey, we appreciate that you guys think we could beat the Patriots right away. We need you to kind of curb that. We just were focusing one match at a time. I really, really liked what Sam was doing there. What did you think?
Yeah, it was smart to temper expectations. He's been around the Schmoedown long enough to know that you do not want to have the fans creating expectations. And we've seen so many teams, so many players get caught up in their own press. They get caught up in reading their own press clippings, and it goes to their head, and then they lose the next match. So it's very smart for Above the Line to not let their first win go too much to their head. Christian warned us, and speaking of tempering expectations, Christian warned us before he cut to these promos that there wasn't too much smack talk, and he wasn't kidding. There wasn't a lot of smack talk. When two teams don't have a lot of history, there's not much you can really pull out of them, especially when it comes down to these two individuals. So, Christian, you tempered our expectations. Thus, I did not have expectations for these two promos.
It's also hard to get any kind of smack talk going when one of the three is a mute.
Exactly right. However, the mute came out with the strangest entrance yet. It was even weirder than performance art. I can't even describe it. It was just the strangest thing I've ever seen. But like a bona fide face, they know they don't have to do too much like phony faces do. Mike Kalinowski just came out, he acknowledged it and sat down. So the mute had his moment to speak without words, and it was a memorable moment. It reminded me of something almost out of Batman Forever, like the Chris O'Donnell, Dick Grayson stuff. I don't know, but it was certainly ridiculous enough to remember.
Well, I'll tell you what was no joke, and that was Adam Gertler in round one, as he got all 8 questions correct. Mike added 5, 13-point round for DC. On the other side, Above the Line, Sam, 7 points. Drew also got all 8. And
wait a second. Are you saying that 2 players got perfect round ones?
First time it's ever happened.
The verge of history here, Christian.
Yeah. And 1 pens down, please, Sam Levine.
Woody Harrelson.
That is correct. Mike.
J.K. Simmons.
All right, and good guess, but Drew.
Woody Harrelson.
Perfect. And Adam.
Woody Harrelson.
Adam. Oh, Drew are perfect. Perfect round. So here's how.
Wow, man.
First time.
There sure seem to be a lot of perfect round ones lately.
What's going on?
Man, I wonder if round 1 is easier than round 2.
Yeah, could be 16-13 at this point for Above the Line. What did you think of these performances?
I can't believe Kalinowski missed the Crazy 88. That is very bizarre. I also found it bizarre that Sam and Mike both missed the Lovely Bones director. That movie was so bad that you kind of remember the fact that it was the director of Lord of the Rings. Lisbeth Salander in Fincher with a Dragon Tattoo, played by Rooney Mara. Christian again mispronounced this question as far as the name goes. So competitors, wise up, pay attention. But the story of this round, as we've already covered, Drew and Adam with their perfect rounds. Adam has shown to be a decent player, but I don't think we knew he was capable of something like this. So Kalinowski is good, as we know, but we now know that Adam can step up and chip in whenever his teammate is down. As I said, the true mark of a great team is when one player is struggling and the other player steps up.
I have a theory as to why Gertler was so proficient in round 1. He co-hosts FX Movie Download. So the guy from about the 80s up until now, they hit a different movie every single week. And he gets, he rewatches these. So it's kind of like a refresher course every single week. So it doesn't surprise me that he pulls these questions because let's be honest, the Schmoedown itself has questions mostly from the modern era. So it doesn't surprise me that Adam Gertler could pull these.
Are you sure he's not the co-host of WGN America's Movie Nights?
No, not him. Different guy.
Okay, just making sure I've got my FX Movie Download type shows correct in my head. But it was no surprise though that Drew got the bonus question the year that Grease was released, 1978. Adam missed it. He said 1977. So Drew is continuing to prove that he is the 70s master. Above the Line has that 16-13 lead. going into round 2. And by the way, I saw some commenters referring to Above the Line because of their ATL initials as Atlanta. So I don't think some people realize that it's not Atlanta, it's Above the Line.
Let's get into round 2, where it was DC Movie News getting 2000s, going 5 of 6 for 9 points. Above the Line did add a 1-point steal. Sam took it. Adam Baldwin burned down the church in The Patriot. It was 22-17 DC after their turn. What'd you think here?
So Kalinowski spun 80s, but he spun again for 2000. So this again paints a picture that the majority of the Schmoedown is not comfortable with periods, be it the 70s, be it the 80s, be it classics. This is going to serve a larger point because there's a player in this contest that is very comfortable with 70s and 80s. And so 2000s, 9 out of 12. Very good round, all things considered. That Patriot question was tough because everybody thinks of Jason Isaacs as far as the villain of that piece. And so Adam Baldwin, that's a tricky Skalitzky moment right there. And I like what I saw from DC up until this point. This is the last decent moment for them as far as this match goes. But through 1.5 rounds, DC Movie News proved that they've got a very bright future in this league.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, they got a KO in their last match. It didn't even make it to the 5th question, for Pete's sake. So
now, can I ask you, did they get a perfect round 2 in this case, DC Movie News?
They did not.
Okay, just making sure.
Well, Above the Line comes up, and wouldn't you know it, they get 70s. But it did not go the way that you may think. 3 of 6 for 6 points for Above the Line here. DC Movie News had a couple chances to steal points here. They could not do it, but Above the Line kept a slight lead, 23-22 after the second round. What'd you think?
Yeah, it was a 7-point round out of 12, including a 1-point steal from DC Movie News' turn. Drew got his favorite category, and yet he didn't get a perfect round. So round 2 perfection sure is rare, even when it's supposedly your strength. So anything can happen, folks. And when you've got a question like, what's the song in The Man Who Would Be King as he's tumbling to his death, when you're asking what's the song in that scene, that is a very difficult question. So I'm going back to my rant last week about objectively easy, objectively difficult questions. Even if you've seen the movie and know the answer to this question, you can say, this is an objectively difficult question to answer. Whereas you take a question like, who is Sarah Marshall? Who played Sarah Marshall? That is an objectively easy question when you compare it to one of the more difficult questions like, what song was playing as so-and-so tumbled to their death in The Man Who Would Be King? So it's a great example of a point I was making last week. But even though it was only 6 out of 12, minus the steal, of course, even though it was only 6 out of 12, they were still impressive in those 6 points out of 12. It was the most impressive 6-point round ever, just because Drew, even at half strength, still pulled things that would surprise most people. So they got enough to keep themselves in the match. That's all that matters. And that is why that bonus question in round 1 was ever so important, because they maintained that 1-point lead going into round 3.
Which put all the pressure on DC Movie News to come up big. It was Mike Kalinowski going first. Horror thriller. Who was the director of The Ring? He could not pull the 2-pointer. It was Gore Verbinski. So DC not off to a good start here. We go to the 3-pointer. Adam could not pull this one. The Spectacular Now was the Miles Teller film.
Let me add to this, because I've always said to people who listen to this show, especially competitors who listen to this show, watch the Schmoedown. This is a repeat question, or a question that has been used before to some variation or inverse. So if you watch the Schmoedown, you would know the answer to this question, and you would have gotten this 3-pointer correct. So Adam Gertler, I know you don't talk. I know you can't respond to me, but if you watch the Schmoedown, you would have 3 points by simply doing that.
What all came down to DC. They had to hit the 5 at least to send it back to Above the Line. They could not do it. Spencer Tracy was the other actor to win back-to-back Oscars other than Tom Hanks. in acting, mind you, not just back-to-back. And above the line, TKO's DC Movie News 23-22. Above the line punches their ticket to the Final Four. Brian, what'd you think?
Look, a win is a win. They don't all have to be dramatic and climactic. And it's interesting, though, how both matches this week both had major round 3 collapses. So DC Movie News, they played well, like I said earlier, through 1.5 rounds. And yet round 3 just completely fell by the wayside. So I don't really know how to add too much to that other than round 3 can be tricky, especially if you don't watch this show. Had they watched this show before, they would have had 3 points. Who knows what would have happened? The right team won at the end of the day, but ATL, they were my pick to win it all. They are the story of the tournament so far. They are getting wins. Sam Levine's luck has clearly turned. What's changed his luck? Has he done anything? Has he sacrificed the chicken? What is the key to this luck change? Because above the line, I'm not saying they're getting lucky, but they are getting some very fortunate outcomes. And I will say one thing, though, about Drew's spin in round 2. It was kind of a weak spin. And typically Christian likes to respin those weak spins, but because it was 70s, I understand. We want to have Drew McQueenie take a shot at 70s. It wasn't the weakest spin we've seen, but it was a questionable spin. But again, I picked them, so I'm not going to make a big deal about it.
Feels weird that, not long ago, DC Movie News had won by KO. The first KO that we had seen in a long time, probably half a year in this league. And now they're getting TKO'd in their next match. I get it. KOs and TKOs do not equal each other, but that's still kind of got a sting. I mean, you're on this high. You just had a huge win, and then you take a TKO by missing your last 3 questions. That's got to sting a little bit. So I don't know what their confidence level is right now. They have nothing to be ashamed of. I think they played a great game. It's just sometimes those collapses happen.
When it comes down to it, Kalinowski had a terrible round 1. He only had 5 points in round 1. That's not terrible, but Gertler did the heavy lifting in this match, and Mike really did not match him when it came down to it in round 3. So you're not going to have many performances from a bona fide face like Mike Kalinowski where he does not carry his own weight. Yet this is one of the rare occurrences where Gertler stepped up. Unfortunately, Mike couldn't give him the bare minimum.
Well, let's talk about the post-match now. Brian, take us there.
Well, it's time for the Emma View. ATL was all business. Again, they were my pick to win, so I'm feeling good. Mike Kalinowski was very upset about the wheel, about their third round questions. He was upset that Drew got 70s again. He was just upset in general. He even referenced Clark Wolf, which I found very interesting since every horror movie is now associated with Clark somehow, even The Ring. And Mike does this weird thing where he will reference a previous moment on the show and apply it to himself. So in the past, he said things like, oh, this is my Bespin moment, or this is his, oh, I could turn heel over this bullshit. Like, he'll take these iconic moments from the show and try to apply a circumstance from his own match to fit those moments that were iconic within the show. So he keeps doing it. He's done it to probably 3 different iconic moments. And so I just found it weird that he referenced Rachel Cushing's iconic moment of turning heel over James Bond. He felt he could turn heel over 70s once again. So I don't know. I like that he is watching, though. That is proof that Kalinowski's watching. I just don't know that his partner was watching the mute. Had his partner been watching, this match may have been quite different. And what did strike me as odd, though, was the fact that DC was trying to start up this rivalry with Team Action again. So in the last match, Trek and Action, JSR came out to talk a bunch of smack to Action. But now DC Movie News is trying to revitalize their rivalry with Action. So basically, whether Action wins or loses, they've got somebody waiting to attack them. And basically, they're restarting that Roxy-inspired storyline. There was that one thread that Roxy planted, how she doesn't like how a certain somebody, her boyfriend, is acting. And so they tried to make that into a thing. They abandoned it for a while because Action was winning so many matches. But now they might come back to it in the event that Action loses. So very interesting. I'm sure you can pick up some subtext that I'm saying here, but there's proof of something here. We'll find out what it is soon. So Aaron, what else do you have to say about this post-interview?
DC, like I said, they played a good game. Mike came out, he said all the right things. Gertler didn't say anything. Maybe he did say the right things, I'm not sure. I like these guys. I like this team. I want to see what they can do next. I'm not ready to see them against Team Action yet. I think Team Action is a class above DC at this moment, and the way they're going into the tournament, it may be a while before we even see that match. But Kalinowski and Gertler, I'm impressed.
You don't want to see them against Action because that would mean Action loses to the winner of Top 10 and Blofeld's Cat. So I definitely don't want to see that, even though I've picked Blofeld's Cat to go to the finals. So I definitely want Action succeeding. So at some point, though, that Roxy storyline is going to be mined somehow. They planted it there. It's low-hanging fruit. It's established, so you might as well play with it for a little bit. But all in all, once again, above the line. We expected them to win last week when they had their impressive debut. Next round, they're not going to play quite like this. They're certainly going to have to answer some round 3 questions. So this team is still dangerous. Once again, 70s is not their only category of strength. These guys are powerful across the board. Sam can fill gaps in Drew's knowledge and vice versa. And Drew has made a key point to point that out as far as the 90s, certain films that are not in his wheelhouse. Sam directly grew up in that era, as did I, and he can come up with those no problem. So I'm so excited about this team as they're one of the new faces, even though Sam's a familiar face. They're a new face, they're new blood, and I love what they're doing. And it's just nice to see new teams succeed.
2 teams on either side of the bracket that are just on a tear. Are there 2 more dangerous teams in this tournament right now than Above the Line and Team Action? I don't think so.
No, they can beat anybody. Both of these teams can beat anybody. So I wouldn't be mad if one of these 2 teams went on to play the Patriots at Spectacular. Both of them would make an interesting match just because Above the Line, they're all business, but they know so much in categories that most people don't. That would be a heck of a match against the Patriots. Team Action, though, against the Patriots. Heels versus heels. The Smack Talk, the Den, taking on Action. That would be something. Do you think Action, if it came to that, do you think Action would get a temporary stable just to even out the numbers a little bit? Because they are greatly outnumbered by Top Den.
No, I don't think so. I think Action wants to stay with just those 2. And I think that's the way it works best. You don't want to bring somebody else in there that doesn't necessarily vibe with them. So if the 2 of them are working, which it's working great, just leave it as is.
That's why I don't want to rush Ben to singles, because things are working right now. Don't risk screwing up the energy of things, the chemistry of things. Just do what you're doing. The formula is working. Keep making those videos before your next match. Just keep doing everything you're doing. Wear the same suit if you have to, because it's work. Good 2 matches to start the week.
Absolutely.
Good 2 matches.
Absolutely set on fire. And now we're going to go to some more stats from Frank Janisch. Frank, stat us up.
All right, here we go with the DC Movie News Above the Line stat recap, round 2 matchup. It's in the first round here, DC Movie News with 13 points, keeping on pace with what they did last match against 6 Degrees when they scored 14 points. But Above the Line, they scored 11 last match. They scored 16 this time. In fact, Drew McWeeny, he even got a perfect round, answering all 8, including the bonus for 9 questions, all correct. He becomes the 5th player in the team league to have a perfect round with the bonus. Now with that lead, they took that into the second round. They defer to DC Movie News, and Movie News had a pretty solid round, 9 points. Above the Line, they got a favorable category on their spin 70s. Didn't go quite their way, got 7 points only, and that's when things got interesting because now DC Movie News found themselves down only by 1 point. All they had to do was answer a couple questions in the third round, and they could put the pressure on Above the Line. However, that would not come to be, as this would become the 3rd time it has happened this tournament that a team has gone 0 for 3 in the third round. That's right, DC Movie News did not answer their 2, their 3, or their 5, which means that gave Above the Line their first TKO of the tournament. Now, above the line in this match, they answered 20 out of 24 questions for 83.33% accuracy rate. DC Movie News answered 18 out of 29 questions for an accuracy rate of 62.07%. There you go, guys. That is your stat recap for DC Movie News versus Above the Line.
Hello, everyone. Your faithful host, Aaron here. Do you like what you're hearing so far on the rundown? Great. Give us a thumbs up if you're listening on YouTube. Leave a comment. Join the discussion. Listening via iTunes, please rate and review the Schmoes Know iTunes feed. It helps us out tremendously. It helps us move up and down on the charts. That way more people can listen and more people can get involved. We would really appreciate it. Be sure to check out the other shows on SK Plus. On YouTube, there is something different for you every single day. Different shows with different personalities. You can't go wrong. Be sure to follow the show on Twitter at SD Rundown and email us anytime. Schmoedownrundown@gmail.com. And now back to me.
All right, guys, we're sliding into our next recap here. It is the Wolves of Steel, Clark Wolf and Mark Riley versus late to the party, the Bracket Busters, Robert and Vanessa. Of course, the promos start us off as always, and this one, it was just very nice and very complimentary to each other. And, the whole, I'm sorry, we like you, but we're going to have to beat you kind of bit, like both of them did it. It was okay for me. What about you, Frank?
Yeah, it was okay for me as well. I did like at the end that they did start to turn, be like, hey, you know what? Nice of you to drive all this way, this and that, So, because there's not really a whole lot you can do between these two teams. We all know that Late to the Party admires and respects Wolves of Steel, and Wolves of Steel likewise respects what they've done thus far as being this fan team. So it wasn't, you were never going to get these haymakers thrown at each other. It was always going to be something cordial, similar to some of the stuff we've seen in the past from other teams. So it was kind of what I expected to get out of this.
Well, this is what the French call a mutual admiration society, and I'm just glad that LWTP got the chance to binge all of Wolves of Steel's matches as a way to strategize against them. But more importantly, Christian finally put a stop to Ken's nonsensical attempt to shed LWTP's fan label. So then in the intros, he even came out and said they were representing reactors everywhere. So I'm glad that Christian stopped Ken from undermining what LWTP represents to the small-time reactors out there who are working hard for their shot at being the next fan to make the leap into league play.
Let's talk about the entrances now, furthering that. Late to the Party comes out. They're tearing up brackets like, hey, we destroyed your bracket. Sorry about it. And their Ghostbusters jumpsuit. I thought that was pretty fun.
It's actually Bracket Busters, Aaron.
What did I say? The Wolves of Steel come out, and, maybe I was expecting some pizzazz maybe, but they went classic with it. The Superman jacket made its return, the old zip-down Wolves of Steel shirt. I did not have a problem with it at all. As I said last week, you don't want to hammer it every single time. Sometimes it's nice to lay up, and that's exactly what they did here. I like this entrance. Classic, fun.
This is what the French call a full circle moment. So this could have been their last match, and I don't blame them for wanting to go out the way they came in with the Wolves of Steel shirt, leather jackets, etc. So what are they going to do for their next match? Who knows? But I see where their heads were at in terms of going for the full circle moment.
Frank, do you have any French translations you want to drop on us?
No, I'm all fresh out of my. Brian took all of mine, so I'm all out. But this entrance, I wasn't surprised that Late to the Party did the Ghostbusters thing. They talked about it in their last post-match interview.
Frank, it's Bracket Busters.
Yeah,
this is a separate brand called Bracket Busters. Ghostbusters is affiliated with Sony Columbia.
Right.
Well, let's talk about round one now. It was the Wolves of Steel, Clark getting 7, Riley getting all 8 points plus the extra bonus point. Riley joins that elite club of all correct answers plus the bonus. Very nicely done. On the way,
another perfect round one. That's just so weird that it keeps happening.
I feel like you're indicating something, but I'm not quite grasping it. On the late to the party side, it was Vanessa getting 5, Robert getting 6. So after the first round, 16-11, Wolves of Steel. Frank, I'm sure you have some statistics on this.
Yeah, this was a hell of a first round from Wolves of Steel. If only Clark had just listened a little more closely to that first question, we could have seen for the first time teammates have perfect rounds. It's already been done by one team in DC Movie News, albeit they did it in separate matches. There are only two teammates between Adam and Mike to have perfect rounds as teammates, again, in separate matches. But what Riley did here, he became the 6th player in Team League history to answer all 8 and the bonus. He joins Drew McWeeny, Mike Kalinowski, Whitney Seibold, Robert from Late to the Party, and Matt Atchity of MODOK. So Riley has been on this pace. He's been nipping at the heels of answering 8. He's answered 7 3 times in 3 of his matches. Last match was a bit of a downer, a shocker. He only had 5. So for him to bounce back, get a perfect round, get all 9 with the bonus, just shows you the type of mentality he has going into this match. He wants to go hard at this for Clark to get her that belt, for him to go out on top finally. And Clark, she's been consistent in the first round throughout this season, answering 6 and 7 points consistently. So no surprise that Clark had the performance that she did. And when these two are on top of their game like they were today, just watch out. It's a recipe for absolute destruction.
Brian.
As Frank mentioned, Clark misheard the first question. That's something that's happened to her a few times, and it's always frustrating how she seldom uses the JTE rule named after Josh McCouga. If you don't hear something correctly, use the rule. That's what it's there for. I don't think this happens to many people but her, so I just don't know why this has not been adjusted at this point, given that it's happened 3 or 4 times that I can remember. So frustrating because, yeah, it could have been a historic moment statistically. And as far as late to the party, this was a very disturbing round because questions that you would consider objectively easy, they missed. Most famously, Felicity Jones in that awful Star Wars movie, Rogue One. So I don't know what the deal was there. Vanessa even used the JTE rule named after Josh McCouga, and that did not help her in that case either. So the tide was about to turn at some point, and this was the match where it happened. In question 8, there was an interesting moment in regard to Ashton Kutcher and Sean William Scott, Dude, Where's My Car? Vanessa said and misspelled Ashton wrong. She said Aston and wrote Aston, no H. Yodi also misspelled it, but he said it right since Robert said it right first, so I guess it's allowed in that case. However, if you spell it wrong and say it wrong, something Vanessa did, despite someone pronouncing it correctly before you, I don't think you deserve to get that point in such a case. So Vanessa did not deserve that point in that instance. So it was clearly wrong every which way. So guys, keep close attention in that sense, whether you're saying it, whether you're writing it. Again, though, another example of a leeway league. But however, I'm not surprised that Mark Raleigh got a perfect round 1 because historically, singles and team totals in round 1, there have been 14 perfect round 1s, while in round 2, between singles and teams, there have been 8 perfect round 2s with no multiple choice. So there are more perfect rounds in round 1 historically in the 2017 season, of course, than round 2. So 14-8, that is your current ratio. That is why we have 6 men in that group that have bonus points on top of that.
Let's go to round 2, where the Wolves of Steel were up first. They spun comic book movies, and as Riley said the post-match, it's his strength. 6 of 6 for 11 points, giving Late to the Party no chances to steal. At the end of their turn, it is 27-11. A lot of team matches end at 27. So, Frank, this has got to be something historic, right?
Oh, yeah, this was... everything was just going their way. First round went their way. They got comic book on their second spin. And then they just rolled right through this category. And no team, there's only been 9 teams in the history of the Schmoedown, basically this season, to have 29 points or above. The fact that they did it in 2 rounds has never been done. It's quite an astonishing feat. I was completely blown away by this performance. I always felt Wolves of Steel on their A game could be good. I just never thought they would be this good. It's quite scary for above the line to be watching this match and knowing this is something they're going to have to contend with. But likewise, above the line's no joke. But again, it's an incredible feat that Wolves of Steel have done this. I don't care who was playing them this day. I don't know if you can get out of this second round with any chance of winning in the third.
Well, what's interesting is Wolves of Steel chose to go first. They did not defer. First, they spun fantasy sci-fi. Then they spun again for comic book movies. So again, I think after everyone saw critically acclaimed defer, I think no one wanted to repeat that lapse in strategy. So the Patriots have been doing it. It's worked for them. I don't know why you wouldn't want to put pressure on your opponents. So it's working in this case, as they had an 11-point round, which it's not a perfect round. A perfect round would be 12 points, but 11 out of 12 is certainly close. And Mark Riley showed that he's got a lot left in the tank despite his impending retirement. That is why they wore their familiar costumes up top in their entrance, because this is potentially, or was going to be, their last match had they lost. So Mark Riley is still at the top of his game. It's a shame that he's going to hang it up after this. But look, what a way to go out. This could have been a record-setting match as well, as we'll get to. But what a great round for one of the final Wolves of Steel matches. And again, these were not simple questions either. James Mangold, the Wolverine, sure, but Gus Gorman, Superman 3, the Stan Lee cameo in Iron Man, Kurt Connors, the actor who played Kurt Connors in The Amazing Spider-Man, Aldrich Killian in Iron Man 3, The Organization, the Indian Ocean in Man of Steel. These were not give me answers. These were objectively difficult questions for the most part. So this was not some typical comic book movie category that most teams fly through. They had to do some serious work here.
I thought it was funny that Clark talked about Superman 3 beforehand. That's kind of funny and ironic. But let's talk about late to the party's turn. They spun DiCaprio, which was, I believe, one of Vanessa's strengths that was listed. 2 of 3 for 3 points. The Wolves of Steel took away Alec Baldwin in The Departed, took 2 points off the board, and just kind of out of nowhere, late to the party was knocked out of this match, 29-14.
Question 4. What historical figure is portrayed by Josh Lucas in J. Edgar? A. John F. Kennedy. B. Robert F. Kennedy. C. Joseph McCarthy. D. Charles Lindbergh. Incorrect.
And your winners by way of knockout.
My immediate thoughts were I didn't really know a knockout was coming, because I don't know if there was a cut or something, but it was like they scored and then, oh, it's over. It's like, well, hold on. I didn't even know we were in the process of possible elimination. I didn't feel like there was enough setup there.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm reading too much into that.
Yeah, there was no setup. It was very abrupt, and perhaps editorial wanted to go for that abrupt knockout moment. But yeah, I feel like on the screen, it would be nice to have something on the screen. Yeah, they have their work cut out for them already, but it would be nice to have some kind of notification on the screen and post that a knockout is possible if this team misses this question, or if this team gets this question right. That way the audience at home at least knows what to expect. But late to the party, they've been playing with house money their first 2 matches. And their first category that they spun, sports movies, we know that's a weakness of theirs. They spun again. They got a presumed strength of Leo, but as we have seen in the Schmoedown before, you can get an actor's category like Leo, and the questions are not necessarily about Leo. They can be actors or directors that have worked with Leo. So that was the case in who played Solomon Vandy in Blood Diamond. That was the case with Ellerby in The Departed. They said Michael Sheen. Clearly they meant Martin Sheen. However, Michael Sheen was in Blood Diamond, oddly enough, but they missed it since it was Alec Baldwin. Martin Sheen was who they thought of, even though Martin Sheen was not the character of Ellerby. So Mark Riley, he's going to take advantage of this. He's going to steal that, hence 29-14 at that point. Josh Lucas and J. Edgar, again, that's a Leo movie, but it's not about Leo. He played Charles Lindbergh. They missed it, hence the knockout. And this is what frustrates me. This is something that we'll touch on later, but 29 points in 2 rounds for Wolves of Steel. This could have been a record-setting match, but unfortunately it was stopped short because LWTP did not have a good match. So again, I've been saying this for a while. Late to the party, they've been playing with house money given the degree of difficulty of their questions, as well as their category polls. So this Leo category became awfully difficult, as it wasn't just about Leo, as I keep saying. So the objectively easy questions, though, like those in round 1, such as Felicity Jones, they also missed those. So they were bound to have a match like this where things simply did not go their way. They've still made a case to be a part of this league for many matches to come, but at some point, the luck was about to turn, and boy, did it ever in this match. So this is what happens when you no longer have questions that are, who's this actor? What's this movie? Especially post-2000.
I thought when they got DiCaprio, I was like, that's something they can manage. And Brian, you're right. It doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be asked questions specifically about Leonardo DiCaprio. It can be anybody he's worked with in his films. And that's exactly what happened here. They didn't know how to pronounce
Jimon Hansu.
I don't even know how to pronounce it. So it kind of sucks. They had to go to multiple choice on that to get the right answer. So they did the right thing for themselves in that moment. Missing the Felicity Jones question really hurt them in terms of getting out of that 4th question, because they could have missed that one and still had opportunities with the 5th and 6th. I'm sure they've been beating themselves up. Missing that one, it's quite a time to have a brain fart like that on a franchise that I know they both love. So couldn't be easy to sit with after this match. But if you're going to have the performance that you have where the luck just runs out, every team has those in this league. If it's going to happen, you might as well get handed a KO in the process against a team like Wolves of Steel, because if it happened during a match where it was close, that's a little more hard to swallow, in my opinion. But happening here, I don't think it's going to hurt that bad, especially if they lost to their idols of the team league. So I feel for late to the party. Yeah, they got knocked out, but at the same time, they had a good run here, their first 2 matches. So, and you're right, Brian, I think they do have a place in this league, and they just came across some rough questions, and it happens to everybody in this league at one point or the other, and it just happened to happen to them in a tournament match.
This is why I don't value points records, because they are opponent dependent. You can put up a great match, and if your opponent doesn't do their job, your potential record is cut short. So if someone sets a team record in points or singles record in points, it's no longer going to impress me. And that's how I feel. It's a cool stat, sure, but at the end of the day, I don't value it as much as I used to.
Well, let me ask you this. I understand, and I agree with your statement that it's opponent dependent. Given that the first round and second round, those questions are guaranteed. So if someone answers 29 points in 2 rounds, I mean, that's pretty significant. That's not opponent dependent. So could you see yourself siding with points scored in the first 2 rounds as a significant milestone, as a stat, because it's not opponent dependent?
Well, if they start tracking the most points after round 2 as an official stat, then I might give it some value. But
well, to be clear, I'm doing all the tracking, so
of course. But until they start recognizing records after 2 rounds, it's basically meaningless, because everyone will remember another team scoring 34 points and not the team that was on pace for 39 points. There's been other teams that have been on pace for greater than 34 points or 33 or 32, and yet they were cut short because of their opponent. So I'm just not going to get wrapped up in points records when they're out of most teams' control.
Well, yeah, I understand. That's why I was just wondering about the 2 rounds that are not opponent dependent, and that was my only.
Well, if Christian decides to start recognizing the most points after round 2 in the actual show, then I might sing a different tune. But until then, no one's going to remember who had a potential record that was cut short. We might, but the average fan, the average Schmoedown viewer will not. So,
well, it kind of seems like this whole round 1, like everybody getting a question, somebody getting all 8 questions is this big milestone, and then the team points at the end is a big milestone. Where's the round 2 milestone? Like, it's kind of forgotten. I mean, hopefully they do recognize that one day, and every round kind of gets its due.
Round 2 should be recognized, especially if it's a perfect round. So far, statistically, it's a more difficult thing to pull off. So, well, all in all, can't take anything away from Wolves of Steel. I just wish they had the chance to go for 39.
Well, the thing with perfect rounds in round 2, I think the reason you see fewer in round 2 than round 1, partly because I think teams can opt to play it safe and go for multiple choice. We've seen teams and players go, I think it's this. I'm pretty sure it's this. I'm going to go to multiple choice. Whereas if they got that question in the first round, well, they obviously can't fall back on multiple choice. So they go with their gut instinct and then they get it right. So I think that could be somewhat in play in terms of perfect rounds without multiple choice in round 2. I think there has to be some of that because we've seen players go, I knew it, but I needed to make sure.
That's a rare occurrence, though. The majority of people, when they request multiple choice, it's because they don't have a clue what the answer is. So that is why round 2 perfect rounds are so few and far between. So it's very hard to pull that off, and the stats back that up. So round 1, they're 1-pointers. I think, from my perspective, that it's an easier round. I have polled players through DMs, just taking surveys to get their anonymous perspective. The majority agree that round 2 is more difficult and that round 1 is less difficult as compared to round 2. But the majority of people, make no mistake, when they request multiple choice, it's because they don't have a clue. Sometimes they have an idea, they're just not sure. I'll give you that. But the majority of the time, multiple choice is done by necessity.
Well, and just one last point before we're done with this. In terms of round 1, though, for teams-wise, you have to remember we're doubling the odds of a perfect round happening in a team match as opposed to a singles match. So there is more opportunity for that to happen just based on you have 4 players going trying to answer a perfect round. So I think that could also be in effect, even though it only happens, well, we've never seen 2 people do it in one team match, but of the 4, your odds are double that it could happen as opposed to a singles match. So it could take longer. But
there are also 2 to 4 more questions in round 1. So the fact that there are 6 more perfect round 1s when there are 2 to 4 more questions, you can't ignore that either. So all in all, I believe round 2 is more difficult. The fact that there are significantly less round 2, perfect round 2s, that helps back that up. A poll that I took of players, they think round 2 is more difficult. And how many times have we heard people say, oh my God, the wheel. The wheel round is the most intimidating round to most players. So if you go perfect in round 2, there's something to be said about that. That is worth celebrating to some extent. I don't know how you commend that. There's no club, there's no recognition for it, but if you go perfect in round 2, you are doing something right.
And one last thing, if you follow the SD Rundown Stats Twitter page that we just created, I'm going to post the accuracy rates for each round, first round, second round. It's a cumulative, or I guess to say an average of all the teams, and you can see just how accurate teams and individuals are when in the first and second round. So it's an interesting nugget. So go ahead and follow SD Rundown Stats if you want to see that information.
Yeah, that's an important thing to bring up. We have 2 Twitter accounts now, at SD Rundown Stats. That's where Frank drops all of these stat nuggets for fantasy players, for people that are just interested in stats, as well as for players who want to get an edge in their next match. Of course, you can follow the show at SD Rundown for the latest Schmoedown news, the latest giveaways, the latest reactions to news, the latest links to our episodes, the latest guest announcements on our show. So that's where we're going to be reacting to all the general issues and news that don't involve statistics. So
let's get into the post-match interview now. I got to say, guys, I have a lot of respect for Robert and what he said. I know I'm jumping ahead here, but Emma tried to play it off like, hey, late to the party, you guys played a pretty good game. And Robert cut her off. He's like, okay, Emma, let's be honest. We got our ass kicked. And I respect the hell out of Robert for saying that, because he could have easily just been like, yeah, we played a great game. It just didn't go our way, like the usual typical garbage. But Robert owned up to it and was like, yeah, we got our ass kicked. So I completely dug that. What about you, Frank?
Yeah, I mean, that just shows you they are true fans of the game, because that's what fans are saying. If you go to the Facebook page and be like, hey, late to the party got handed one, and albeit Robert's a little more blunt about it, and that's to be commended, to know when you've been had. So, yeah, I like that he said that. He was real, and I appreciated that fact.
Very cool. What about you, Brian?
Yeah, I think they feel secure as far as their place in the Schmoedown. They took action to the brink. They upset and broke everybody's brackets by beating critically acclaimed in round 1. So, yeah, he's willing to admit it was a straight-up ass-kicking, as he said, and there's no harm in that. Some people, some new teams might be afraid to admit that because they want to be asked back, but Late to the Party is confident that they have a place in this league given their performance so far. But the Wolves of Steel, this nothing to lose tour continues to show that if you're about to quit or retire, you're going to perform the best Schmoedown of your career. We saw it with Christian Harloff. We're still seeing it with Christian Harloff. His nothing to lose tour has resulted in the best Schmoedown play of his career. And now the Wolves of Steel are playing like a team that has just been formed. They are playing like there's no tomorrow, because really there isn't any tomorrow when it comes to Mark Riley's Schmoedown career. So competitors out there, just decide you're going to quit and you'll succeed. And then once you succeed, just decide to unquit. Perfect solution. That way you'll succeed like Harloff in Wolves of Steel. And again, it all came down to those Leo questions. Yeah, Late to the Party had some misfires in round one with some objectively easy questions, but when the Leo questions are not about Leo, anything is possible at that point. And in this case, nothing was possible. So the comic book category, as Robert said, though, that was the holy grail to both teams. Wolves got it first. And even if Late to the Party got it themselves, that was not an easy selection of questions. It just wasn't. That was not, who played Batman in the 1989 Batman. These were some tough pulls. So ultimately, Late to the Party has nothing to hang their head about. They upset and broke people's brackets by beating Critically Acclaimed. Wolves of Steel go on to face Above the Line, as I predicted, on the right side of my bracket. I wish that was the same for the left side. But lastly, LTTP talked about meeting their heroes and how you can sometimes be disappointed. They said despite getting their asses kicked, they were not disappointed in meeting their heroes. So one more point as far as the match goes. This week was mostly Emma view, and I just got to say, I really miss Jen Sturger. We saw her mostly in week one, in round one. We've seen a lot more Emma ever since, and I miss Jen. I miss the neutral approach that she gives to these post interviews. I like that whether she likes the team or not, she makes moments special with all of them. She embraces who that team is and tries to give them the best interview possible. I like when she looks back at us and engages with us, the audience. So I miss Jen Sturger, guys.
I don't have a problem with Emma being the face announcer, Grace being the heel, and Jen being neutral. I don't have a problem with it at all. I understand people get upset about it because it's like,
I don't have a problem. I don't have a problem.
I'm just talking about the majority of people on certain Facebook groups that seem to have an issue with it.
I don't mind any of the interviewers at all. What I would like to see, though, is, and we do get it when a Lions Den team or individual plays, you get Grace and you get Emma. I would like to see Emma or Jen and Grace. I don't think we necessarily need to see one interviewer for both teams. I think it would be a kind of a cool change to have two. You have two interviewers on staff apparently, so why not use one for one team and another for another team, whatever combination that might be, and then that way you get I think an even rotation of who's doing the interviewing.
Well said. All right, guys. Here in a second, we're going to talk to one half of Team Action, Andrew Ghai, as we recap our next match.
All right, we welcome our guest, Andrew Ghai of Team Action, to the show as we're about to pull off a triple whammy. We're going to interview Drew, of course, but we're also going to recap Bottom 10 versus Blofeld's Cat, so we can hear Drew's takes on that match. And in doing so, we'll be doing a preview/promo for Drew's next match against Top 10. So this is the Swiss Army knife of all appearances, something that's never been done before in Schmoedown history.
It seems only appropriate that you would have greatness on for that.
Absolutely. So Drew, at this rate, at the rate you're going, Team Action will soon need celebrity Schmoedown branding on its matches. So how are you feeling? How are you feeling amid your rise to Schmoedown superstardom?
Look, man, I will be 100% awesome. That's it. That's my answer. Honest it's been incredible. Like the positive support, and like I know, this interview is like I'm going to be Dashley Drew, but I'm also going to be myself a little bit more than you guys normally get. And like I woke up to 200 notifications on my phone yesterday, and I am in by no means a famous person at all, but it just feels awesome because the fans are so great, and even the fans that quote unquote don't like you or not on your side, there's still a respect about the way they bring it up for the most part. And basically just being part of this community has been one of the greatest things ever, and becoming one of the rising stars just seems only appropriate.
Well, let's start off with the basics, as Ben told us how you guys first met and whatnot, but let's hear your perspective as far as how the team was first created, because it seems like a lot of preparation went into the kind of team you wanted to be. So talk about the creation of Team Action, as you're now the buzziest team in the league.
I mean, big shout outs to Ben Bateman. He's not only is he my teammate, he's also, without a doubt, my best friend and my brother. And he kind of brought me back from the dark side 3 years ago, and not the Team Action Army dark side, like the actual dark side of like being in Los Angeles and kind of trying to figure out my life. And we started doing action movie anatomy. And then you fast forward to 2.5 years later, and he's got another great idea of something that he's in love with, which is the Schmoedown. Again, him being such a good friend of mine and my business partner, I was like, all right, let's take a look at this. And, you know, I watched a match or two, and I definitely was into it. I love movies. I love movie trivia, obviously. But I'm also like a really busy person, and I focus more so on acting as a career. So it was one of those things that it was like, do I really want to involve or invest my time in something else? Not because it's not interesting, but because I don't want to spread myself too thin. And it was just one of those things, man. I think it's the same thing as everyone. When you watch the Schmoedown, you start to realize this community and the people behind it. And I was just like, why not? Why the hell not? This seems amazing. We got a good brand behind us. We are the action guys. So let's try it out. Now, when we showed up at the studio, we definitely had a different idea of what our personas were going to be. And the commissioner himself definitely let us know exactly what our personas needed to be. And I think we found a great middle ground.
Drew, you guys released a video Monday night that was essentially a promo for your match with Team Trek. And as I've said already, you captured the tone of the Schmoedown to perfection, which shows that you're winning not just on the trivia side of the game, but the showmanship side of the game. Meanwhile, Jason Inman was still trying to push this tired narrative of you guys being one-trick ponies when that was dispelled in round 1 of the tournament. So sure enough, you guys throttled Team Trek via TKO. So can you talk about your victory over Trek, as well as your overall tournament experience thus far, before we get into top 10 versus Blofeld?
Yeah, absolutely, man. I mean, I feel like Team Trek was kind of our first big match, and that's not to take away from anyone else that we'd already played. You know, when we played Nerds Watch, we were both so new in the league. It honestly just didn't feel the weight to us, and I don't think it was because it wasn't an important match. I think it was because we didn't really understand the gravity of what we were getting ourselves into, you know? And so, you know, moving forward, it's become this thing where people kind of try to discredit us by who we play, but then they also try to say that those same people are going to destroy us because we're one-trick ponies. And then when we beat them, they find themselves backtracking, saying we got lucky, you know, this thing. They don't spin the wheel hard enough. Ben carries Drew. Drew carries Ben. It's all bullshit. It's a team. It's the whole thing, you know. It's like people still are out there saying that LeBron James, they talk shit about how he plays basketball. Look, whether you hate him or you love him, he's one of the greatest of all time. And we are one of the greatest of all time. And I think that going into Team Trek and destroying them, not beating them, we destroyed them. We destroyed them in every single sense of the game, which is our game plan. People walk in there and they think you show up, you do the match, and you leave. No, that's bullshit. If you want to be great in this league, and you've seen the people that really stand out, people like the Rokas out there, who I just even hate that I have to say his name in this interview. But the dude is some of the most active of the people competing with his fans, and you see how important that is to them. So again, going back to what I was saying, we interacted all week. Ben and I got together at 11 o'clock on Monday night to shoot that video after working for 14 hours that day. I had to get in the shower, throw on a suit, do my fucking hair. I was exhausted, you know, but it's part of the job. And then you go there and you got to have a good act. You got to have a good pregame. You got to have the you know, it's all these things. And so as much as I really enjoy Team Trek and I respect them, I just don't think they covered all their bases, man. And I think Inman was sitting there. Don't start a trash talk fight with Team Action if you can't back it up with your knowledge.
Some people just seem to have a one Trek mind, if you will.
There you go.
But let me ask you this before we get into the recap, just one more thing. Like, you see top 10, I mean, they're former team champions. They have these, John Roka's a former singles champion. They have these accolades. They have the tenure, if you will. Anything that you see in them where you're like, all right, well, we can take advantage there, or anything like that?
Yeah, absolutely, man. I think so. I've been an actor for a really long time, and in college, theater was my major, and I did a lot of plays. And towards the end of my senior year, I was just burnt out. You know, like I get to set, or not even set. You get to the theater, and you're just like, oh my god, I got 3 hours of rehearsal, 6 days a week. I've been doing this for 4 years, and you're beat. One thing that my director told me was, you can learn as much from the person that's their first day on set as the person that's their 400th day on set. John Roca and Matt Nost have lost their thunder. They've lost their fire. They've lost their passion. That's what makes you great. That's what makes you want it. That's what makes you fight for it. Just because Roca yells a lot and like crashes everything from people going to the bathroom to funerals does not mean that he's passionate. It just means that he likes to show up places where he's not invited. Okay? And then Matt Nost, dude, I'm taking dumps with more personality than Matt Nost, okay? You got to cover your bases. I'm not worried about them. I will say that they've gone far enough. They've done things before, but look, man, I'm a 49ers fan. You can't stay at the top forever, and they have clearly shown that their time has come and gone, and now they're just like, it's like sadly fighting to stay relevant.
Drew, when you guys first came into the league, not a lot of people responded to you in a favorable manner. You had talked about how you and Ben had a vision of how you guys would work in the Schmoedown. Christian had another idea you could compromise. So when you got that first feedback from the Schmoedown community, how did you guys react to that?
You know, it was humbling, and I think that's important in this business. You know, not the movie trivia Schmoedown business, but in the entertainment business. You know, Ben and I are young. We're young bucks with the fire underneath us, but at the same time, we're also just we're young, like compared to a lot of people in the league. Whether it's our age or whether it's how long we've been involved in the Schmoedown. This is, again, not taking any shots at anybody's age, but it's about experience. And I think we got exactly what we deserved when we came to the league. We came in with these big hotshot personalities. We beat a team that, despite how much I enjoy Emma and Joelle, is not a very good team, and it never has been. I think that we expected more, and we got exactly what we needed and deserved, and it makes everything now that much more sweet because we've put in the work now, and people are starting to recognize it. If you got it in the beginning, it wouldn't have been earned, and honestly, I think it would have been, if the Action Army started week 1, I'm pretty sure they'd all just be banned from the Facebook page at this point.
Who you play doesn't matter to me anymore. It's how you play. You're responsible for your own performance at the end of the day, so who you play means nothing to me. But Aaron, let's get to Top 10 versus Blofeld. Why don't you lead us over there?
Well, I got to start off with the promos here because we had Blofeld's cat getting there first, and there was no Tom Dagnino.
Yeah, Grace was functioning in the Dagnino role.
It's weird. It almost just makes it seem like they don't care as much.
I don't know. I thought that Grace, for the most part, held her own, but there is no replacement for Tom Dagnino. I don't care who you are.
I did like her line saying that it was pathetic that Top 10 had to create another team just to beat themselves, potentially the Patriots. So nice line there. But I'm not going to read too much into this. The tournament schedule's been a bit crazy. Even Dagnino has some other priorities in Hawaii and whatnot. He's traveling the world. So I'm not going to read too far into the absence because, you know, Jeff's running a site, JTE's sleeping with the enemy. So let's not go down that path too far. But overall, decent promos all the way around. Shots fired on both sides. Burnett had a nice little haircut for the match. And I'm not sure his Game of Thrones castle is yours metaphor worked all that well. Drew, did you have any thoughts about this castle is yours metaphor?
I am embarrassed to say this, but I've seen 2 episodes of Game of Thrones. And don't get me wrong, I loved those first 2 episodes, but I just haven't. So no, for me, it was just completely a flat reference. And I love me some RMB. That dude is a fucking national treasure.
Are you ever scared for him because of his yelling and that he's just going to pass out? You ever get scared?
Yeah, totally. I think we're all worried a blood vessel's going to burst in the beginning of a match, and it's just going to be, that's it. We're going to have a funeral right there.
Penn Knapsack is certified to resuscitate people, so that's why he's on staff at Collider.
Oh, can I say this real quick? Shawn Michaels was my favorite wrestler of all time, and Ken using the line that I lost my smile, it broke my heart. I love Ken Knapsack. I love the Nerds Watch. And that line, although it was beautifully poetic, it was heartbreaking.
If only it were true. He's smiling brighter than ever these days.
I know.
Yeah, that line definitely cuts deep. I kind of wish that Ken wouldn't have referenced it later on. I wish he would have had people go dig for that because that is one of the classic wrestling promos of all time. But let's talk about the entrances now. It was pretty standard for me. No flash, no flare. They just both kind of come out and sit in their chairs. But I got to give a shout out to the Beast, William Bibbiani. That guy can sustain a boo for I don't know how long. Did you guys catch Bibbiani booing in the crowd?
Oh, yeah.
He's always the loudest in the crowd. Or not the loudest, but he's often audible in the crowd.
Poor Bibiani is just fueled by pure hatred and despair. It is like, for someone that cares so much, that dude has just got a rough run.
An angry beast is the best beast.
Hey, Drew, real quick, I'm curious about your entrance against Trek. I felt like the boos were a bit exaggerated. I felt like maybe someone told the audience at your Trek match to boo you guys extra loud because it was almost as loud as the Patriots. So did anyone suggest to the crowd to give you guys the heels boo, if you will?
You know what, man? I don't know what's going on in that place, but there's a puppeteer, a master puppeteer. I'm pretty sure it's just Christian Harloff with he's got someone doing it for him. I heard nothing. I knew nothing about that. And I think you can see when we came out, Ben and our reaction, I just start flipping off the crowd and tell them to go fuck themselves. Because we had no idea. And also, it wasn't one of the biggest crowds at Collider that day. It was just who was even out there? I thought it was just Roca and Bibiani, but no, there was, I don't know what happened. It was very loud, but it's the type of thing that we were just we love it. I mean, you saw, I don't know if you guys have seen the movie Warrior. We did a big tribute to Tommy Conlon in our entrance and our exit.
That answers a lot of questions, but should we get to round one, guys? I mean, should we reference that jail time reference, or should we just pretend it didn't happen?
I think we'll move along. It's out there. You can Google that if you like. It's out there in the ether. Well, it was Blofeld's cat, Andreyko getting 7, Burnett getting 2. What do you mean
Jesus.
2?
Oh, boy. He took a big dump. That's right.
Whew. My goodness.
Yes. Some of those misses, and as a competitor, I understand. You guys saw a couple of weeks ago, I had my worst first round ever. I only got 3 of 8, and I knew 2 of the answers, and I should have been able to guess 1. I definitely should have gone at least 5 of 8, and it's embarrassing. It definitely is. You walk away from it, it's I love horror movies. I know Scream better than Ben. Ben probably couldn't tell you the name or the stars of all 4 Screams, unless now he has with his research. But it was one of those things where you just kind of got away from me, and then you kind of get in your head a little bit. And even if you try not to get in your head, you're human. You either know it or you don't. And sometimes you know it and you can't think of it, And I saw a lot of that happening with poor Bernie last night. And you just feel for the dude. When you're there long enough and you're not trying to be an act, we're all human. And sometimes you just can't think of the name of that person.
I knew this match would come down to Nost and Burnett. I knew that Roca and Android would do their job, especially in round 1. But in round 1 for Nost, 5 points out of 8, that's an 8-point round for that guy. So compared to Burnett's 2, that was the key difference really in the match, not just the round. So in regards to the second question, Forrest Whitaker in phone booth, Nost thought Al Pacino was in phone booth. So he must have been thinking of that trash can 88 Minutes, which came out 5 years after phone booth, but had a lot of similarities to phone booth. So I
think he was thinking of The Recruit.
Yeah,
it could have been that too.
Of course.
Could have been that too. But again, 88 Minutes, there's a lot of similarities to phone booth. Even the visual style is similar. So you see where Nost's head's at. It's just not quite there. But yeah, Nost and Burnett are always the keys when you've got 2 great players on individual teams like Roca and Android.
It's just so crazy to me that you say something like 5 of 8 is an 8 of 8 for him.
Relatively speaking, yeah.
That's just crazy to me. I feel like a 6 of 8. I think 6 of 8 is what that is. You know what I mean? But 5 of 8, I feel like should be. I think you know what I'm trying to say here, and that's my point behind top 10. And you're gonna sit there and say Ben carries me and I carry Ben. I had 1 bad round. Ben's had bad rounds before. We both helped each other out, but none of us are ever oh my god, they got 5 questions right in the first round. Holy shit, this is a good day for them. And if that is the case, then you haven't been watching.
Well, this year, Nost has answered 6 twice this year, 4 points one time, and then this round 5. So he's kind of up and down, and you never know what you're going to get from match to match.
5 points from him, that is, relatively speaking, a great round. So,
well, it's actually the average for the league, so he's right at the league average.
The league average still isn't 20% for the respective team.
I'm talking about round 1,
the 5 points. 80% to 20%. So Roca is doing work. Android's doing work. The key was going to be Nost and Burnett in this match. And as we know, that's how it ended up.
Well, on the other side, John Roca going 8 for 8. So he gets the elusive bonus question, but does not pull it. So it was just an 8-point round for, I can't believe I just said an 8-point round. It was an 8-point round for him, 13 points on the top 10 side, 9 points for Blofeld's cat. So right out of the gate, top 10 with a 4-point lead. Drew, I got to get your thoughts here. After the first round, what were you thinking?
Wow, you guys should have more points. Like, if one of you went 8 of 8, and that's happened a good amount in this tournament now, of course I would love to go 8 of 8, but, like, it's not a thing anymore for me. I mean, I don't know how it is for you guys, but when I see someone go 8 of 8 in the first round, I'm not like, oh my God, look at this. It's just like, you watch movies and you got 8, good questions for you. So for me, again, I'm not saying it's not impressive. I definitely think it's great. But for me, when I watched it, I was just kind of left wanting. You walk away with 13 points in the first round, and one of you scored 8. It's just not good. You're saying 20 points, 20% of the points are only coming from one person and 80 from the other. I mean, it makes sense, but that's just not what you want out of a championship team. You can say that JT gets carried by Schneider as much as you want, but, like, he carries his own weight. He's not a 20% player.
JTE steps up plenty of times. And with Nost, Nost has to know who Bob Hoskins is in regard to Roger Rabbit. Similarly, when he doesn't know a question like that Me, Myself, and Irene question, Renee Zellweger.
He didn't know Arnold either.
Well, that's the thing, though. He shouldn't be wasting a JTE rule, which was named after Josh McCouga. He shouldn't be wasting a JTE rule if he doesn't know it. He wasted his team's, one of them at least, one of his JTE rules when he had no answer at the end of it. Bad strategy there on the part of Nost.
I'm actually going to give him the benefit of the doubt on that one. I felt like, at least from where I could watch it on my computer, it seemed like it was on the tip of his tongue and he couldn't quite get there. He thought if he had a little more time, you even see Roca kind of nod in approval that he took the JTE rule so that he can give himself a chance to pull that at the end. Didn't happen, but I'm not going to fault him for that one, especially the way the round would go and the match would go.
Those things are still valuable, though, and that could have cost them dearly later in the match when they needed it most.
You can play the woulda, coulda, shoulda game all you want.
You don't want to use a JTE rule on a 1-point question. You want to use your JTE rules on your round 3 questions, on your round 2 questions. Those are the moneymakers.
I agree using the JTE rule in the first round is not maybe the most beneficial thing to do. But if you can get a point out of it, Skalicki made a great point with Trek and Inman and Mance. Mance would have got that 2-point question. Inman would not have gotten the Aladdin question because what you didn't see on cameras is after the answer to the question was answered, we all went, oh my God, no way. Because we all thought it was either become a prince or escape the cave. We all forgot about the drowning. So my point behind this is if you hear Jennifer Lawrence, Scott Mance is clearly the stronger player on that team. Scott Mance is also a very smart Oscar player. So in that sense, what are you going to get questions asked about J-Law? She's only been around for a little while, but she's highly regarded in the Oscar world. Yeah. So it would have either been like a question about a year one of her movies came out, Mance, some Oscar that she would have won, Mance, or maybe a character in a movie, which is maybe a toss-up. It was a huge mistake. So to get back to your point, in the first round, had Nost gotten the question right, it would have been good. He didn't get it right. It was a waste of it. But like when Ben and I talk now, we don't talk about the questions that much. We talk about the questions for maybe 30% of our conversation, and we talk about strategy for the other 70%.
And I brought this up recently because there's been a trend where people use the JTE rule named after Josh McCouga, and then they get the question right after using the JTE rule. Ben's been doing it like crazy. So this is one of the few examples where someone used it but didn't come out of the other side.
So you want to cast blame on him for using it when he gets it wrong, but it would have been all right if he got it correct? Is that what you're saying?
I'm saying this goes against the trend where a lot of people have been using the JTE rule named after Josh McCouga, only they've come up with the answer from using it while he didn't. So all in all, I still wouldn't use a valuable JTE rule in a tournament with stakes on just a 1-point question.
I agree with that too, because you think you missed one 1-point question, you can make up for that so many more times throughout the match. You can never get your JTEs back. And if you end up on your 5-point, and if you're like Ben last match where I had to what if I didn't hear it also? Then we're just shit out of luck. You saw it also in the match. They burned those JTE rules early, so they had to say Simon Pegg and Nick Frost for their 5-point. I remember watching numerous times, and I'm being like, why didn't they say, because they can't. They wasted it.
Exactly right. So.
Not good team form. Well, let's go to round 2 now, where it was top 10 up first. They took sports movies, took it right away. They go 6 of 6 for 11 points, leaving Blofeld's cat no opportunity to steal here. So the lead for top 10 is getting quite large at this point. Blofeld is going to have to play some real big catch-up here. Drew, what'd you think, man?
That's a good round. I'll give him that. Yeah, that's it. Yeah, I'll leave it at that. I mean, the fact that Rocco just talks too much. For him to be like, there's only one thing on the board that we felt comfortable about, and we got it. It's like, what are you doing? You realize that there's 30 other competitors out there that just listen to every word you say.
That's a good point. I didn't even think about that. That's a good point.
This was the type of round that they needed to have if they're so confident in sports, because if they did anything less than what they accomplished here in the second round, I can't imagine their confidence heading into that third round would have been as high. So, and then you take a look at what Blofeld's cat eventually did when they got their turn. It could have been a mess. So the fact that they were able to pull out 11 points on their turn is exactly the thing that they needed to do. It's exactly the thing that they expect themselves to do, which then fuels their confidence. So it was a good round by them, and it was a great rebuttal by Blofeld's cat, as we'll get into.
Brian.
What was interesting to me was that T10 did not defer, something they did in round one. So I think Critically Acclaimed scared everybody away from deferring in round two. So they were aggressive, spinning first, not deferring. And yeah, they got sports movies. That's been a strength of theirs for a while. But when you compare this sports movie selection of questions versus the sports movie selection of questions that Dagnino got against the pizza guy not too long ago.
This is true.
This is a wildly different selection of questions. These were significantly, not just significantly, these were objectively easy sports questions, all things considered. And we've been watching the Schmoedown long enough to know, relatively speaking, what falls on the difficulty meter, what falls under the easy meter. So all things considered, easy questions, but they took advantage and got a great round, perhaps their best round in a long time, with 11 points.
I have two questions about things that you just brought up. The first thing is about deferring the spin, and the second thing is about objectively hard questions, because that role model's 5-point question in my mind was so easy. But you know who I talked to right when I walked out of that match? I talked to the Crusher and I talked to Mark Riley, and they both did not know the answer. They are both incredibly good at this game. It is all subjective, in my opinion.
See, that's where I have to disagree to some extent. Like, if you haven't seen a particular movie, you don't know certain things. You can still look at questions and decide what is objectively easy versus what is objectively hard. So, for example, McQueenie this past week got a question that asked for a song in the third act of a 70s movie with Sean Connery, the man who was there, or something like that. It was a very vague question from a 70s film. So that is an objectively difficult question, even if you know the answer. So I could admit that I know that Christian Bale lost 63 pounds to film The Machinist. Even though I know that, I can agree that that is an objectively difficult question. So conversely, an objectively easy question is something like, who played the titular role of Sarah Marshall in Forgetting Sarah Marshall? That is simply asking for the actress who played that titular character. So
yeah, we all know that's Gwyneth Paltrow.
Exactly. But by comparison, you can see which one is objectively difficult and which one is objectively easy, even if someone doesn't happen to know it. So we know at this point what falls under the difficulty or easy scale in the Schmoedown, because we know all the types of questions that are usually thrown. So it's not about whether you know it, whether you've seen it. It's comparing the difficulty to past questions relatively.
All right, I can totally respect that. But I do have to ask about deferring the spin on the wheel and why you guys think that is you guys think that's a benefit.
I want to take it first, which is something the Patriots have always done. They do not defer. They want to build a lead so they can put some pressure on their opponent. They want to make their opponent sweat, especially in a match with stakes. So if they build a lead first, all the pressure goes on to their opponent, who have to then play catch up. So in a match that has title implications or tournament implications, that is pressure that maybe a young team is not ready for. So it's a strategy that really most teams take, but lately we've seen people defer or deter from that strategy. Top 10 did it in round one. They deferred. Only in this round, they went right back to being aggressive and spinning first. So I think Critically Acclaimed scared everybody off from doing that, at least for now.
You know that we win all of our matches by doing that, right?
You guys deferred?
Yeah, we always do.
Again, it's to each his own, but I'm just saying the strategy that we've seen the most is people spinning first in these type of matches to put pressure on. That is why they do it. Is it something everybody has to do? Certainly not, but it's worked for the team that's 7-0.
Well, it's definitely put the squeeze on Blofeld's cat. They had to do something here because they were treading water real fast. They spun Oscar movies. They go 5 of 6, getting 10 points. Mark Andraco came to play as we knew that he would. Top 10 did have one chance to steal. They could not pull it. So after round 2, going into the third, top 10 had the lead 24-19. Blofeld's cat hanging on by a thread. Drew, what'd you think?
I just think Andreyko has the sweetest name. That's about all I have to say. The Android is probably the coolest competitor name. Second round, it was impressive. Third round, I thought this was a pretty good match, honestly. I think they both really showed up, and I think by the scores, it's pretty evident that this was a shootout, man.
No doubt about it. I really did not see it going this way after round 1. Like I said, I thought Blofeld's cat was DOA after round 1 after the Burnett stuff. And I'll talk about this a little bit later in the post-match, but it kind of felt like Burnett was the guy in the picture that's like jumping in the back. He's like, I'm here too. I'm answering questions. But Frank, what did you think?
Yeah, I think coming out of round 2, I wasn't really sure what to expect from Robert going into that third round because he just seemed completely dejected after his first round performance. You can kind of tell in his body language, I thought. So, but the second round that Blofeld's put up, they did exactly what they needed to do, obviously. Mark Andreyko proving that he's one of the better competitors in this entire league, team or singles, despite that Jay Washington match. Yeah, he had a hiccup. But since then, he has proven himself time and time again in every capacity that he is for real. He shows you why he was so good in that match against Bibiani in his first meeting. Look, Andreyko, he's now the Robert Meyer Burnett of Team Heroes of Schnepp and Campia. So it's Robert Meyer Burnett has had a role shift here with Andreyko taking the lead pretty much in both of these matches. So it's going to be interesting to see how Blofeld goes forward.
It's just crazy to me that it was almost a tie still. That's why it's so interesting about the first round. Burnett had a horrible first round, and they still almost went to overtime. Sudden death.
Yeah, it did come to that point in the third round. Had Robert Meyer Burnett had a better first round, it could have been a totally different story.
This was a statement round from Mark Andreyko, and a lot of teams in this situation would be dejected. They'd probably give up, but they spun Oscars. They took it. A lot of teams would have respun at that point, but not this team. Objectively, this was not an easy Oscars selection. This was a rather difficult Oscar selection. I've been referring to it as the Oscar Classics category, even though there is no such thing, but they had so many older questions related to Oscars, of course, but Argo, that's the most contemporary question that was asked. And it was kind of a trick question because some people would automatically think of Ben Affleck because he's also a screenwriter. But of course, the Android knows Chris Terrio from his BVS and DC affiliation, so that wasn't going to get past him. I'm disappointed that they didn't take their time on the Sidney Poitier question. Android knew it. They just rushed it. That's where Burnett should have come up to help the team a little bit since this round was all Android, but he got them back in this round. Android, of course, single-handedly. And this is where I go back to that point about the objectively easy sports questions for T10. These were objectively difficult questions for Blofeld. These were not walk in the park Oscar questions. So all the more impressive of a comeback for Android when you consider that he had to name Julie Andrews and Hannah and her sisters and Jane Fonda include. I mean, these were some really tough questions, whether you knew them or not. So it's unfortunate that it wasn't a perfect round. It should have been a perfect round, but no perfect round twos in either case, as it's 24-19 going into round 3.
Well, Brian, you got to remember, you're forgetting that they do gear the questions towards how old you are.
It might be that way. You just might be right.
Let's talk about round 3 now. This is what it all came down to. Blofeld's cat was up first, and Robert Meyer Burnett came out firing. Got 2 points for the almost famous movie quote.
And Robert, for the second match in a row, begrudgingly took the 2-pointer like he did in round 1. He was upset that he had to answer the Family Films 2-pointer in round 1. Same thing here. He was reluctant to answer the 2-pointer, almost, again, begrudgingly, and yet he got it. So at least he got his 2-pointer. That would have been bad had he not come up there when the team needed him most.
What the hell is that all about? I mean, Burnett did a great thing, and he got the question right. Look at deep cuts. Look at the way that they take the question, their 2-point question. Look at the way that Inman takes a 2-point question. I'll fall on the sword. I volunteer as tribute. No. I'm going to fucking rock the shit out of this 2-point question. Good luck with yours, Bateman.
It's like Burnett. Burnett should know. Burnett should know that Android's the hotter player at this time and that he's the weaker player. So you should not have an ego about having to answer a 2-pointer.
Well, it's a good thing they made the choice because Andreyko did get the 3-point question. Denise Richards in Starship Troopers, well played there. So now we go back to top 10, which leaves us to the 2-pointer with Matt Nost. Good call there. Bill Murray in Ghostbusters, the modern Ghostbusters, of course.
And it's important to point out that he again used the JTE rule named after Josh McCouga, only this time he pulled one of his best pulls in a while, which was Bill Murray getting the answer correct. And even if you've seen this movie, this was a cameo role. So I was very surprised that Nose pulled this just because the role was so small that it's easy to forget a cameo, even if it's Bill Murray, because you're thinking of Bill Murray, not so much this cameo character he's playing.
And of course, you're always thinking of Bill Murray as Peter Venkman and not his role in this film.
That too, especially when it comes to Ghostbusters.
So we're down to the 5-pointer now. They had to hit it. Blofeld's cat had to get it to stay in the game. And Draco nails it. Inner space. So we have to go back to top 10. What did you guys think here of Blofeld's cat starting from the bottom? Now they're here. They're back in the game. Can't believe it.
It's a great comeback story for them regarding how big of a hole they were coming out of that first round. They fought their way through that second round to keep pace. And then, hey, they did what they needed to do to send it back and put pressure on top 10, who haven't had the greatest of third rounds. And Rocha hasn't been at the top of his game for a little while. So the pressure was on Rocha to answer the 3 to help with the 5. And it was very, very interesting to see it go back to them. I was nervous for top 10 at this moment.
So while it was an amazing comeback, I kept thinking of Robert's poor performance in round 1, as well as that Sidney Poitier question in round 2. So this could have been a potential win had Robert just performed to league average, something he usually does, if not more. So as much as I was excited for this being a match, I knew that it likely wasn't going to go in their favor, considering how poor of a performance Robert put up in round 1, plus that missed opportunity in round 2.
You know, it's tough, man. Again, those first rounds can be really rough on players. And so I was definitely feeling for Bernie in this moment. My biggest problem is, and this is all total speculation, because who knows whether or not Nose would have gotten the question right had they not let off the gas. You cannot get defeated because you're not doing well. That is what losers do. To quote Dagnino, and I'm only going to do it once, that's loser behavior. That's not the way you play. You've looked at us. We played from behind many times. We played from behind every match, but we played from massive deficits against nerds watching late to the party. Had Ben and I given up on ourselves, had we relented on our trash talk and on our gimmicks and on our shtick and on our taking our time and doing things the right way, we probably would have lost one of those. I mean, we probably would have lost a late to the party as well. Who knows? If I had sit there and beaten myself up, I wouldn't have gotten the love bug pool. Maybe if Ben beat himself up, he wouldn't have gotten the color purple. My point, though, is that, again, who knows? Because he did have such a bad round that it might have been. Well, no, that's not true. They did come back from it. They almost tied the game. So I think you can't relent, man. If you have a rough round, you pick yourself up, you keep going hard. We both know Rocha and Nose get flustered easily. Don't relent, and that's what they did.
Rocha drinks 2 Red Bulls during matches. If you know the side effects of Red Bull, if you've read up on this, there's a reason he gets so anxious in hindsight. So I don't want to help the guy, given my bias, but if he wants to improve his game, stop drinking Red Bull. It's just my advice.
Well, look at Crusher, man. When's the last time you saw the Crusher walking out with a Red Bull? And she had one in round 1, and she just she froze up. It was so not like her.
Yeah, as we saw at Collision, a little bit of alcohol and now a little bit of Red Bull. Again, these are not going to help your brain function, folks.
And I love to drink.
Well, guys, in regards to top 10s, 3-pointer, McConaughey and Amistad, JSR milked the clock as he's one to do in round 3. He made it sound like a guess. I don't buy it, but he tied it up at 29-29. Drew, thoughts on this? Do you think it was a guess that he purposely, or do you think it was a guess, or do you think he made it sound like a guess just by milking it?
A lot of cobwebs up there, brother. It was a total guess.
I don't really care if a player milked the clock for a dramatic effect. I'm there to be entertained. I could care less if he's milking it. If he gets the right answer, it's even more dramatic, more fun to watch. So that's how I approach those kind of situations from players.
I just like when Bateman does it naturally, because Bateman has a knack for the dramatics in an organic sense. But Turner, thoughts on this 3-pointer?
I have to laugh because earlier in the match, Christian called him out on it. He's like, you knew that. You were milking it. So, I mean, there's credence to what you're saying there. But, yeah, I'm kind of on Frank's side. Like, I don't mind that you do it for dramatic effect. Just do it a tinge.
Well, Rocha's known for doing it in the Green Berets question against Schmoes when I believe they won the belts. Was that the one match they won the belts? I don't know. Yeah. But against the Schmoes, the Green Berets question was definitely something he knew, and Harloff admitted that he milked it.
It all came down to this. We're all tied at 29. Blofeld's cat coming back from the abyss. Unbelievable. Roca got the question.
What Oscar-nominated actress plays Bernadine Bernie Harris, who discovers her husband is leaving her in Waiting to Exhale?
Yeah, all right. Angela Bassett.
And your winner! It was Angela Bassett in Waiting to Exhale. They might have milked this one as well.
They used their third JTE rule, and I knew the question right away. I'm sure a lot of people did, but they used it for dramatic effect. They got the win. They broke Team Action's team points record in the process. Mind you, the Wolves of Steel scored 29 points in just 2 rounds this week. So I just want to say to that point that I no longer value points records given how opponent dependent they are. I've been annoyed about this for a while, so it's not just a bottom 10 bias, as plenty of teams have been on record-setting paces, including Wolves of Steel and their 29 points against Robert and Vanessa on Thursday. However, because of opponent performance, many of these record-breaking performances would have been greater than 34, but are cut short because of their opponents not living up to their side of things. So to celebrate this record when it was only made possible by Blofeld and Android being a good team is not something I'm going to do from now on in most cases. So again, it's all opponent dependent. So I can't praise this like most people want to. So Drew, they broke your record for now. How do you feel about that?
Dude, I could not care at all because you want to know what I think is super interesting? I love the Schmoedown Rundown, by the way. If you guys don't follow them on Twitter, please do. You guys had a great stat in there that we are the number 2 scoring team behind the Patriots. I think we have 105 points, and the Patriots have 134.
Yeah, in regards to fantasy points, yeah.
Yeah, we have 2 knockouts, man. I haven't even played in the 3rd round. You know what I mean? Like, who knows what the points record would be if we had a better team? If teams would have scored more points, if either of the first 2 teams we played would have answered one goddamn question right in the 3rd round, maybe I'd be able to wake up in the 3rd round. You know, congratulations to 33, but you only got there because they scored what 20? What did they get? What did the other team get?
29.
29, exactly. So, you know, whatever. Good for you.
I've been saying this for years. So I'm not going to celebrate points records too much. But so now it's top 10 versus Team Action, a matchup that nobody saw coming despite JSR crashing 2 of Team Action's appearances this week.
Well, real quick on that points record, they also did break the overall points record of 33 points that was held by the Patriots, which they did in a 5-rounder. So top 10 scored 34 in 3 rounds, where Patriots scored 33 and 5, just for stats' sake.
We appreciate that.
Well, top 10 played well, all things considered. However, there are still some major red flags here. Nost, again, accounted for only 20% of his team's points, much like in round 1 of this tournament. JSR put the team on his back again. Secondly, the sports movies category, again, compared to Dagnino's sports movie round against the pizza guy, he got very easy questions by comparison. So top 10 received some generosity in this match, while Blofeld's cat had to answer not just Oscars, but classic Oscar questions for the most part. Look, you're not going to keep getting Roca performances to this degree in rounds 3 or potentially round 4. So at some point, Matt Nost has to step up to give you more than 20% of your team's points if you want to be a championship team. And that is why I predict Action will win, because I know Bateman and our guest Drew are a more balanced team.
Well, let's talk about the post-match where top 10 came in. They were calling you guys out, Drew. They were calling you young pups. They were saying that, you know, you don't know what it's like under these lights. You know, you haven't proved anything, like all this kind of stuff. What is your response to this?
I'm just tired and bored, honestly. Like, everyone's out there and they talk about how the Patriots and top 10 are just as good as trash talkers as we are. I haven't heard one original joke since our first week in this league. Joel and Emma Fife sling better fire than these 2 fucking grandpas, dude. It is unbelievable. Our Target suits, our Kmart suits, young bucks, don't know under the light, only win with action, getting carried by one, getting carried by the other. Like, it's just a broken-ass record, which is why when we come out, yeah, we call people old sometimes because they are, but that's not what we harp on. We cover all the bases. Roca and Nost just regurgitate things that other people who aren't funny are saying.
Yeah, I hate the echo chamber in the league. I wish people would spout new stuff, and that's something that Team Action does. But Drew, J. Steven Roca of You Can't Have It fame said he was going to punch you guys in the mouth per Iron Mike Tyson's famous quote. So for a guy who hasn't put his hands on someone since 1992, JSR sure loves these violent metaphors. So what do you have to say to Stephen R's mouth-punching claims?
I mean, you guys got to remember that in 92, when he did put his hands on another person, it was that quick stint in college when he was trying to figure out who he was. So,
Oh, wow.
That's about all I have to say about that. Not that I have any problems with that. I just think that Rook is stepping into a ring that he does not want to step into.
Of course, we're quoting his words. These aren't just coming out of us.
Oh, of course. No, I got you, man.
Now, guys, Burnett gave credit where it's due. He gave credit to bottom 10. And Grace showed annoyance for him doing this. And then, of course, in the wrap-up, Harloff then tried to draw attention to it as, oh, could this be something? So the very fact that Harloff drew attention to Grace's annoyance with Burnett giving top 10 some credit, you know that thread's going to be pulled on. So Turner, do you think this is going to be the end of Burnett's run in top 10?
Well, I hope not, because I do think Robert is very entertaining as a player and as a mouthpiece. But I said a couple episodes ago that if he did stop playing and was just somebody's manager or just another hype man for the Den, I would be all for that too. I think he's a fantastic mouthpiece. I think he could be a fantastic manager for somebody. So if that does happen, I would hate to see it, but I'd be okay with it.
Hang on a second. This is a former Inner Geekdom champion. Yeah, this was a terrible match, all things considered. But as long as he's your team's number 2 player, as long as he accepts that Android is the number 1 guy on this team, then he's got a role on this team. So he can't get mad when he has to answer 2-point questions from now on in round 3. But as long as he's your number 2 player and he defers to Android as the number 1, there's no reason Blofeld's cat can't have a longer run in team. So I very much hope that Harloff does nothing with this thread that Grace put out there. Drew?
I don't know. I have a problem with people putting blame on their teammates ever. I think that Grace has no legs to stand on to call out R&B for having a rough first round. That's not your job. Your job is to be his hype woman. You're his manager. You're going to be his post game. You talk about the other team and the shit they did, or Harloff, or whatever the questions, whatever it is. You don't ever talk about your own teammate. And I saw that same thing happen with another team that just got knocked out this week by Above the Line, which I was very happy about. But after their first match, one of their players called out the other player for saying that you don't know what kind of performance you're going to get out of this guy, so I have to step it up. That's bullshit, okay? Because you saw in the second round what happened. The roles were reversed. You cannot ever talk poorly about your teammate. It doesn't help anyone ever. And as you see, what are we doing wasting our time right now talking about? We're talking about how some manager or some spokesperson called out one of their players, and now it's going to be a thread. Like, this is just stupid.
I don't like it. But Drew, your team is obviously squaring off against T10 as expected. JSR crashed your round 2 win on Monday. He crashed Ben's Inside Schmoedown appearance on Thursday. How do you feel about the lack of respect he's shown you guys all week, now that you have the chance to show him that the Schmoedown's old guard is on its way out?
I love it, dude. He just keeps embarrassing himself. Like, you keep walking into a position of trash talking with the 2 best in the league, and you're coming in by yourself because you know Nose can't stand on his own. It's just not – I'm never going to walk into a fight 2-on-1, man, no matter how confident I am in myself.
Statistically, you guys have the edge, as bottom 10 has never won more than 2 matches in a row, and they've just won 2 matches in a row. We've also seen Jay Steven carry this team on his back twice in this tourney, and overall for the last 18 months, as the pizza guy is only accounting for 20% of T10's points. Regardless of stats, I know that team action takes nothing for granted. However, what is the strategy right now? Are you going to get in JSR's head, or are you going to get into the team's weaker link of the pizza guy?
The pizza guy. I might place an order with him, but as for getting in people's heads, we're already in Roka's head. That guy is getting paid full time to go crash Ben's interviews. Like, what are you doing, man? You got a brand new job. You need to put in your goddamn time. Like, this is not what you should be wasting your time with. And go study. What are you doing? Like, you keep walking in these interviews, embarrassing yourself, and just dating yourself. It's just giving more attention to us. You saw it on Instagram. You saw it on Twitter this week. He posted a picture with us because he's just trying to be part of the wave.
True. With the cool kids. I like it.
Drew, there's been a lot of talk about Bateman making the leap to singles. For me, I don't want anything to affect your team chemistry, and I don't think Ben would let a singles career jeopardize your team's success at this point either. However, as we saw in Steven's crash on Monday, he tried to pull on this thread that Bateman carried you, even though he's been carrying the pizza guy for 18 months. So what do you want to say to anyone who tries to divide you and Ben, whether it's Ben's leap to singles or opponents' attempts to undermine your team's contributions?
I'm going to steal this from Ben because he was going to use it in the interview yesterday, and then that fucking guy walked in again. We were forged in the mountains, or the fires of Mount Doom, okay? There can be only one. Every other team has a weak link. We don't. We are pure evil incarnate. We are just as strong. Each half of this, we cover each other's spots. We cover each other's weaknesses. Like, we don't care about shit like that. John can go ahead and do the whole repeated broken record thing. The funny thing is about Roca is if you would have cut the the video out of that video and just like reverse the roles, we could have said all the exact same things to him, and they're much more true. He's a choke artist. He's blown it many times. He carries Nost. He's outdated. He's not a good trash talker. So, I mean, in my Inside the Schmoedown match, Ken asked me, my interview, he asked how we come up with trash talk. We don't. These people do it to themselves. And thank you so much, JSR, for just burying yourself this week.
You guys have been focused on one team, the Patriots. You won't even answer questions about other teams unless it involves the Patriots. However, you're not just overlooking teams going into these matches, even though the Patriots are still the overall goal, correct?
Man, if I'm running a marathon, I got to look at the water that I'm going to drink on the way so that I don't die, but I'm only looking at the finish line.
Tell the audience in closing why they should root for new blood like Team Action to advance in this tourney instead of the same old teams we always see in big matches like Top 10.
We've seen Wolves of Steel, and we've seen Top 10. We've seen all these same teams go over and over and over, fire behind us. It's because we care and love this league more than any other team, and I don't care what you say, we do, and we put in the work for it. Going part of a real army. The Action Army is relentless. You guys saw that the Chris Clark put up a post today about who's going to win, and the number 2 answer was Action Army. I love that shit. Everyone is behind us, and it's just growing. So why not hop on the bandwagon now while it's just as exciting? It's only going to get better from here. We can only keep going up. So why not be with winners? Why not be with greatness? These outdated losers who have already shown you they will let you down.
Any parting last shots for T10 before you get back to business?
No, Outlaw. You want to talk about Mike Tyson? Holy food. We're about to bite your fucking ear off.
Well, let me ask one more question before you go. We'll get you out of here real quick. I just have one thing I think everybody wants to know. Where's the belt?
Where's the belt? Where's the belt? Hell yes, Aaron.
Drew, where can people find more of you and your work?
Find me at Andrew Ghai on Instagram and Twitter. You can find Action Movie Anatomy every Wednesday on the Popcorn Talk at 12:30. And please, guys, join the Action Army Team Action fan page on Facebook. We started it 7 or 8 days ago. It's up to 160 people plus. It's already the #1 tracking fan page for a team out there. So we love everyone that's in there. We love talking to you guys. And for having me on, this was so much fun, man. I love the rundown. I've listened to many episodes, and today was an honor. So thank you, guys.
Got it, man. Thank you.
Yep, I see you guys all in the finals, and maybe after we win those belts, you can get Ben and I both on here for the rundown to talk about how sweet it was to take that picture of Schneider crying.
We'll have to do it.
All right, guys. Thanks again for having me. Y'all take care.
Thanks a lot, Andrew.
All right, guys. We want to update you on our brackets that we have going on. Me currently in the lead at a 10-2 record. Frank, how are you doing, pal?
Ooh, I am at a very honorable 5-7.
I don't know what kind of honorable that is, but
I don't know either.
But okay, Brian, what about you, man? How are you looking?
Well, guys, I'm currently sitting at 8-4. The right side is flawless, while the left side is disgustingly awful, as I fell victim to echo chamber thoughts in the early going. And as I feared last week, T10 were willed to victory thanks to Robert Meyer Burnett, as well as objectively easy sports questions, but that's a story for another day. What I do like, though, is that it's the old guard versus the new guard. Wolves in bottom 10 being the old guard, and Action and Above the Line representing the new guard. So even though I picked Above the Line to win it all I care about at this point is that the new guard wins this thing. I think it'll be a major setback for the Schmoedown if we head into Spectacular with yet another Patriots T10 match on the docket. However, the fan base has jumped on the Action aircraft faster than any bandwagon to date, and it's more impressive since it's happened in 2 weeks' time via this tournament. To get this kind of momentum going in standard league play, that would take 4 to 6 months. So you'd have the best promos in the league if Action squared off against the Patriots. Above the Line, yeah, they're more businesslike, but nobody could scoff at Above the Line versus the Patriots. The Wolves of Steel title bid is certainly a nice story, but winning Clark the belt just so Mark can retire isn't ideal for the league long term. So whatever happens, anything but Patriots T10 number 3, the third title match they've played in 12 months.
Well, that's going to bring us to this week's sort of preview, since we have some upcoming matches coming. Top 10, Team Action, Final 4, semifinal. Who you got, Frank?
Ooh, this is going to be a good one. I'm going to enjoy this one a lot. I've come around on Team Action quite fast, just as the rest of the community has. I'm a big fan of what they do. We've had them both on here, and they've been great times. Top 10, I've been a top 10 fan from the very beginning, and I did pick them to be in the final of the tournament. So, yeah, I'm going to go with my pick and stick with top 10.
Okay. Brian, what about you, man?
I gotta go with the new guard. I have to go with the new guard. I want to see the new guard. I'm going with Action. They're the better team. They're the better showmen. It's time for a change. And my God, like I said, the promos for Patriots and Action, it's going to be bloody, folks. It's going to be a bloodbath on both sides. So many shots will be taken. I don't know if they'll be able to even play the match.
I had Cinema Blend famously here. That didn't happen, but I did have top 10 on the other side. And I will also take Team Action because I pretty much just didn't have top 10 moving on. Top 10, great team, great champions, great guys. I think this is Team Action's turn. Let's go to the other side of the bracket where it will come down to the Wolves of Steel, who played a game this week that they would have beaten anybody. I don't care who you are. Patriots, Above the Line, top 10, doesn't matter. The Wolves of Steel were going to smoke anybody. That being said, I have the Wolves of Steel in the final. I will stick with that, beating Above the Line. Frank, what about you?
Yeah, I felt real good about my pick once Wolves of Steel had the kind of match that they just had against Late to the Party. And yeah, I have Wolves of Steel originally against Nerds Watch, but nonetheless, I have Wolves of Steel in the final against Top 10. And just to clarify, I do have Wolves of Steel beating Top 10. So, Wolves of Steel, I think can do, especially given this past performance.
Despite your 5-7 record, Frank, you could be the one out of all of us that has it right. Unbelievable.
That's how you finish.
Brian, what about you, man?
Well, I'm sticking with my pick to win it all, and that's Above the Line. And I do actually think they'll win because they didn't play that well in round 2. They didn't have to. So they're going to play better in this match. And you guys just said that Wolves of Steel played an unbelievable match against Late to the Party. So they just peaked too soon. They're not going to repeat that performance in their next match. They're not going to get comic book movies again like that. They're not going to have another 9-point first round from Mark Riley. So they peaked too early, and I think Above the Line is going to take advantage of that. And overall, though, again, I just feel that having new blood is better for the league. I like the story of Mark Riley retiring on winning the title belts and winning a belt for Clark, but then what? What happens then? What happens then? Mark Riley retires, Clark holds the belts to herself, she finds a new teammate, they become automatic champions? I don't like that one bit, so I think Above the Line's going to win. They deserve to win, and I feel good about the fact that Above the Line didn't play all that well in their last match. They got some weird 70s questions, named the closing credits song to this weird 70s film with Sean Connery that no one ever saw. Everything went the Wolves of Steel's way against LTTP, so that's not going to happen for a second match in a row. Above the Line, folks.
All right, guys, before we get out of here, I've got one question to ask you guys. Who won the week?
It's a toss-up between Mark Riley and Team Action. Mark Riley had a perfect round 1, 9 points. He dominated the comic book movies category. But Team Action, they beat a former title contender in Team Trek. They beat him bad. Like I said, I've never seen a fan base jump on board a bandwagon faster than I have action to aircraft. So Team Action won the week. They've won this tournament. Above the line, they would be second as far as who's won this tournament, but Team Action, they won the week.
Frank, who won the week for you?
Well, it could have been any number of these teams that won this week. Action had a great win against Trek. Top 10 had one of the all-time performances in Team League history. Wolves of Steel as well, albeit didn't get the point total. But I'm going to give it to Wolves of Steel, the team, because they just absolutely dominated in 2 rounds of play. Mark Riley went perfect in the first round. Clark Wolf not that far behind. And then their second round was a great collaborative effort. So to me, it's got to be Wolves of Steel. They just put on one hell of a performance.
I'm going to echo your thoughts there. I think the Wolves of Steel won the week for sure. I think them as a team could have beat anybody today. It doesn't matter who they were. They're going to keep rolling on, man, right into the Final Four. Great performances all around by both of them.
As long as Clark can hear the questions, they have a good chance at winning.
All right, guys, that's going to do it for this episode of the Schmoedown Rundown. We appreciate Andrew Ghai of Team Action joining us. He was fantastic, as we knew he would be. Thanks a lot, man. We really appreciate it. Frank, where can you be found?
You can find me on Twitter at FrankieJ29, and also be sure to go follow the new Twitter page, SD Rundown Stats, where, yes, there will be Schmoedown Stats.
And Brian, where can you be found?
BDF331, as well as filmschlubspodcast.com.
And my name is Aaron. You can follow me on Twitter at ATTitanium if you wish. Thanks to all the people out there that have reached out to me via DM about the situation right now during the storm. I appreciate it. We're all good here. So just keep us in your thoughts. And we'll catch you next week. See you.